IB Nation, welcome back to another edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. It is Thursday, January 11th, and wow, what a crazy 24 hours in the football world. Lots to talk about today. In this midweek rundown, we will have a mailbag. I will try to get to some of the questions that get brought up during the show. So if you want to put one up during the show, I will try to get to it, but I can't promise that I'm going to be able to. Obviously, super chats are easy to see and get to. But I know you all have a lot to discuss today, and we're going to talk about several topics today. Number one, we're going to talk about the report last night that Marcus Freeman was a candidate for the head coaching job at Alabama. I'm going to discuss that from both sides, from the Marcus Freeman side and from the Bama side, and just some of my frustration with the manner in which that was presented. Then I'm going to dive into just an overview of the Notre Dame portal class. I do believe Notre Dame is in a position right now where they are, I don't say done with the portal, but most likely they're going to be done with the portal for at least for now. There always could be some things that pop up, especially with, coaches leaving. Basically, the way it works is even though the portal window is closed right now, if a head coach leaves, players have a window where they can jump in the portal. So if a kid from Alabama that wasn't planning on leaving wants to leave now, he can jump in the portal. And then obviously how things go with whoever replaces Nick Saban at Alabama will be part of that too. So there could be something like that come up. But I think as of right now, the portal is for Notre Dame is pretty much quieted down, most likely until after the spring. And as of right now, Notre Dame has 90 scholarship players right now on the team. So there's going to be some players that are going to have to leave. It's going to be an interesting period. I'm going to talk about just the success that Notre Dame's had in the portal. I got to tell you guys, it's not a sexy portal class, but I love this portal class for Notre Dame. I'm going to dive into that. We're going to do more of a thorough sort of an X's and O's and overall big impact. Just a big impact of what it means for the roster and breaking down the games and all those type of stuff at Irish Breakdown. Probably next week, Ryan and I are going to do something like that. So that'll be a fun show for us to do. But today I'm going to talk about just the overall portal class, what it means for Notre Dame, what Notre Dame is adding to the roster with what they've done in the portal class, and just throw some love at the Notre Dame recruiting staff today because they are absolutely on fire. Absolutely love what they're doing. And then at the end, I'm going to talk about the shakeup of the college football world and what's going on just in general in football, period. I mean, in one 24-hour period, Nick Saban, Pete Carroll, and Bill Belichick are all gone. I mean, it's crazy just how quickly that all happened. Just three legends, three Hall of Famers just gone for different reasons. And so we'll dive into that and what it means for Notre Dame. And there's rumors. There's all types of rumors out there. I mean, I've told you all, 90-some% of those rumors are usually just BS. And a lot of times what happens now, especially now that Twitter has turned into a thing where you can sign up to, be monetized and there's incentive to say some outlandish thing that creates a ton of engagement. If I paid for that, and I don't, I could go out there right now and say, hey, I'm hearing that such and such is a candidate for this. And then some people are going to be pissed and some are going to be happy, but it's going to create a ton of engagement and I make money, even though it's total BS and made up. You're going to see a lot more of these things coming out that are just total BS and rumors or people saying, hey, this is what I would want to happen. And brandishing it as if it's almost like it's a, it's a real list. And that's what I think happened with Marcus Freeman yesterday, which I'll get into a little bit, but more so like, what does all this mean for Notre Dame? I mean, you're having a major shakeup this next several months. You're having one big-time head coach is leaving. There could be some others. You can push back all you want, Andrew, but the fact is that was an irresponsible comment, which we'll get to, okay? No one is infallible, including Pete Thamel. But we're going to get into just the window that's opening up for Notre Dame. And when you look at the idea of the conference realignment, coaches leaving, the overall discontent that exists right now amongst some college football coaches that could chase some of them off to the NFL. What does that mean? All types of different things that are going to impact that. That'll be in segment 3. And then I will get to a mailbag as best I can. I only have 9 questions starred right now. There haven't been a lot of of a lot of questions so far. But if you try to get some out there, I will do my best to get to them absolutely as we dive into the show. So let's dive into topic number one, since that's what a lot of people are talking about, and that is the report. And it wasn't really a report by Pete Thamel last night that Notre Dame head coach Marcus Freeman was one of the candidates for the head coaching job at, or should one of the targets for the head coaching job at the University of Alabama, which obviously came open because Nick Saban announced his retirement. And I'm going to bring up the tweet that Pete Thamel wrote last night, because I'll be honest with you, I was a little ticked by it, to be completely honest with you guys, last night. And I think it was a little bit irresponsible, the way that he put that out. So I'm going to pull up the original tweet by Pete Thamel and read it, and I'll tell you why I have a problem with it, and then I'll give you insight into what's really going on and those type of things. So Pete Thamel's tweet last night basically was referring to, this is right after Nick Saban was announced that he was leaving within an hour. He said, "Here's a quick projected target list: Dan Lanning, Kalen DeBoer, Dabo Swinney, James Franklin, Mike Norvell, and Marcus Freeman. All come with complications and big buyouts, as it's difficult to move entrenched coaches." And the manner in which that this was reported, I was talking to somebody at Notre Dame, and within minutes of that report coming out, recruits are texting people at Notre Dame asking if this is true or not. And so, to me, the manner in which he wrote that tweet was as if this is fact. Freeman's a candidate. And I believe it to be, I don't want to say irresponsible, but the manner in which he wrote it to me was very misleading, in my opinion. And it, to me, it reads as if this is kind of who he thinks they're going to go after, as opposed to who he's hearing that Bama's going after. I mean, you saw something last night from the AD at Alabama basically saying, if you hear something from anybody other than me, it's not true. And what I've been told by people that have knowledge of the situation will show me that list is just kind of more so him throwing darts, or the other thing that happens here too is you have agents. So where a lot of these guys get information is from agents. And, hey, you scratch my back, put my guy's name out there, and I'll give you information down the road. Because then, as an agent, I can use that and say, hey, look, Bama's coming after my guy. What are you guys going to do to keep him happy or to keep him here, and those type of things? And I don't I don't think that's the case. And I'll say something else too. From what I know of Marcus Freeman's agent, I don't know him personally. I've never spoken to him. But from what I've heard about him, I don't believe that him and Marcus are in a position right now where they feel the need to go out there and use that to create any kind of leverage at Notre Dame, because right now Notre Dame is giving Marcus Freeman just about everything he wants. So if you do what Brian Kelly's agent used to always do and is doing now, because this stuff about, we don't know, but just on history, the whole Brian Kelly to Michigan thing, if Jim Harbaugh leaves, I'd be willing to bet you serious bucks that was Trace Armstrong doing what Trace Armstrong's been doing for Brian Kelly since back in 2012, which is just floating stuff to try to allow Kelly to use it for more leverage with the school he's at, or to let people know, like, hey, I'm here to be taken. I don't like where I'm at. I'm here to be taken if you're willing to come get me. And that's been Brian Kelly's MO for a very, very long time. I don't believe Marcus Freeman is in that desire. I mean, this isn't the first time we've heard a report come up. I had somebody who I respect a great deal in the media profession, a writer for a long time, has some very good connections, who called me and told me, this is before the Wake Forest game. He called and told me and said, Brian, I know for a fact that Marcus Freeman interviewed for the Texas A&M job. And I said, okay, I don't believe that to be true, but I trust you, and so I'm going to go dig into this. And I talked to several sources at Notre Dame, and it was denied by everybody. And I'll say this, and the reason I believe the denials is because once Mike Elko was announced as the head coach, there was merit to Notre Dame leaking that Marcus Freeman was pursued by Texas A&M. There's merit to that. There's merit to Marcus Freeman leaking that he was pursued by Texas A&M for the reasons we talked about, which is, hey, these big time schools are throwing all this money at me. I want to make sure that you guys are committed to doing what you need to do to keep me here. And so it was denied the entire time, to the point it wasn't even like, no. It was like, dude, that is flat out untrue. There's no truth to that. You can call this person, this person, this person, this person. These are the people that would know. There's no truth to it. I'm not interested in that job. I didn't interview for that job. There was nothing like that going on. And so, but I had someone who I respect in the media just tell me flat out, he knows for a fact it happened. I don't believe it happened. I don't believe Marcus Freeman is interested in that job. I don't think Marcus Freeman was someone who Texas A&M heavily considered for that job, if they considered him at all. And if they did, I promise you we would have heard something more definitive after Mike Elko was hired about that position. So this isn't the first time that Marcus Freeman's name is getting thrown around in a situation where I don't believe there's any merit to him looking or him necessarily being a top target for other people. And there's several reasons why. Number one is, I'll say this. I've been doing this a long time, and I've talked to, over the years, a lot of coaches and agents and people that are part of these processes, boosters and all that kind of stuff. And the games that get played with these type of things, it's kind of ridiculous. That's why I always tell you guys so much over the years, like, guys, don't pay any attention to this stuff you're seeing on Twitter. You'll know when real names are being thrown out there. And when you look at Marcus Freeman, a lot of times you'll hear, hey, this guy's interested, but there's conversations, but whatever. And with Marcus Freeman, honestly, guys, I've heard so many different rumors about NFL teams or this college or that college. And every time I talk to anyone with any credibility at all on the Notre Dame side, it's always denied. And whenever I talk to someone that's close to Marcus Freeman, it's always denied. And the answer's always the same. You guys don't understand how serious Marcus Freeman is about building up Notre Dame. You don't understand how serious he is about this. You don't. I mean, the guy converted to Catholicism, right, when he came to Notre Dame. Like, you guys don't understand how serious he is about doing something here that hasn't been done in a long time, about building a championship team here. He doesn't have time to be thinking about using A&M as leverage or talking to his agent about doing this or doing that or whatever the case may be, because he also understands that the more his name is leaked out there or linked to other jobs, the greater uncertainty that exists in his universe of his team and recruits about whether or not he's truly committed to Notre Dame. And that's why you see a lot of pushback from Notre Dame people whenever we do reach out about this rumor or that rumor. And there's been a lot of rumors about Marcus Freeman, because he doesn't want his name associated with these things. Like, I talked to somebody last night. You think he'll put a statement out? And he was like, why would he put a statement out? Like, there's nothing to deny. He's not interested in the job. And so, when you look at what Dan Lanning did, or Dan Lanning did put out a statement, that's because Dan Lanning was pursued. I was told last night by somebody that know that Dan Lanning was the likely guy. He was the target. Dan Lanning ultimately turned it down. Bama would have done the buyout, from what I'm told, if he was interested, but he likes where he's at. And so he needed to put a statement out because there were legitimate, people thought he was going to take the job last night. And then there's some things I'm hearing today about Steve Sarkisian and whether or not he would take the job, and that he is someone that they want to have. And now, who knows now? I saw somebody report something that Mike Norvell's the top candidate now. And I don't know how much truth there is to that, but, because there's a lot of clickbait stuff out there, to be honest with you, going around about who this is going to be. And people are going to take these quote unquote reports and use them to write as many articles as they can to get 1 million clicks on them, and trying to convince people that, hey, I'm this is a candidate or whatever the case may be. And there's a lot of agents looking to use these things to get more money for their clients. I don't believe Marcus Freeman is interested in that right now, based on everything I've talked to. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it if he did. I mean, that's part of the deal, right? Part of the deal is when you have opportunities to get for leverage, it's a business. You use them. And sometimes it's not even about, hey, I want more money, but hey, You know what? One thing you can convince me to stay is giving me a $3-4 million extra for my coaching assistance pool, allowing me to expand my non-on-field coaching by a couple $1,000,000. Those are the things that a guy like Marcus Freeman is going to be advocating for. So to me, um, I look at it and say this: it's like when you are focused on a job and it's truly where you want to be, you're not going to want all that other noise. If you're at a place and you're not truly bought into that place, then you're always going to be linked to these other jobs. And that's Brian Kelly. That was Brian Kelly at Cincinnati, which is fine. I mean, he should have gone on. But it was for him. I mean, the Eagles in 2012, we heard rumblings in 2013, 2015, 2016. He was begging, his agent was begging to get him out of Notre Dame. And then, 2017, I mean, we just have always heard there's a reason his name was always linked to other jobs, because he wanted out. He didn't like it at Notre Dame. And then, you see it at LSU now. We're hearing already about Brian Kelly in Michigan. And if the Michigan job comes open, Brian Kelly's going to be a strong candidate. I doubt that came from the Michigan side, because we only ever heard it from LSU reporters. We didn't hear it from Michigan reporters. Why? Because that was coming from some people at LSU, and I believe I know who that is. So Marcus Freeman right now is committed to Notre Dame. Look, there's no definitives. There's no definites. There's no absolutes. There's no 100% in this business. But that's one of the things I'm most certain of when it comes to when you hear his name mentioned. And of course, as soon as it's mentioned, I get 20 DMs and 20 text messages, and there's 8 posts on the message board about Marcus Freeman and the panic that set in for, potentially losing Marcus Freeman, which I certainly understand. And so when I look at Marcus Freeman, I just think there's a buy-in at Notre Dame. I don't think people understand two things about Marcus Freeman, and that is his commitment to winning at Notre Dame, because I do believe Marcus Freeman understands that. And I was talking with a guy I know last night, and he's works at an SEC school, and we were talking like what people don't understand is, and he agreed with me on this. You win one title at Notre Dame, it's like equal to 4 or 3 anywhere else. I mean, Lou Holtz won 1 national title, and we treat him like Bama fans treat Nick Saban. And I'm okay with that. I love Lou Holtz. Newt Rockne won Frank Leahy won 4 national titles. Newt Rockne won. Let me pull up Newt's number, because if I say it wrong, I'm going to feel like an idiot. So let me make sure I get his number correctly. Yeah, he won 3 national titles, and those are a long time ago. Era won 2. Dan Devine won 1. He's got a statue built. Lou won 1. He's got a statue built. Especially nowadays, when there's this perception that Notre Dame can't win anymore. That's a new phenomenon. That's a last 15, 20 years phenomenon, this notion that Notre Dame can't win in the modern landscape of college athletics. And I think there was a time when that was true. There was a time when the administration really didn't have interest in winning. And this was before Father Jenkins and way before Jack Swarbrick, where I think they had kind of relegated themselves to, we're just going to be a good football team. And as long as we go 9-3 every year, we're going to win. I don't believe that's something Jack Swarbrick was ever truly interested in. It's certainly not something that Marcus Freeman is interested in. You can win at Notre Dame. Is it harder? Sure, you can. And Marcus Freeman knows it's harder. But there's a buy-in with him that I have heard from every source that I have. There has been no wavering on that. And almost to the point where, sometimes you'll ask questions and you almost kind of get a chuckle. Like, of course not. I don't think you understand how bought in he is to this. There's another aspect of this too, about, where he's from. He's a northern guy. His wife didn't want to go to LSU and wanted to go to Notre Dame, and LSU, there's rumors they offered more money. Notre Dame eventually offered more, whatever, but they offered him a lot of money, and he wasn't willing to take it because he wanted to interview at Notre Dame because he preferred to stay in the North. And that's a factor in this whole thing too. So I truly believe that Marcus Freeman is not interested in other jobs. Doesn't mean teams won't pursue him. Doesn't mean, I know the big panic one from Notre Dame fans is if Ryan Day leaves, Marcus is as good as gone. I don't believe that to be true. Part of it, the timing of it will matter, but I just truly don't believe that to be true. I think Marcus Freeman understands what he can accomplish here and what it means to accomplish it here. And I think he's completely bought into that. I truly do. The other part of it is, why would Alabama pursue Marcus Freeman? I think Marcus Freeman's doing some excellent things at Notre Dame. I do. I think he's done a tremendous job in certain areas, and in other areas he's still learning as a coach, which we talked about in shows this week. But if you're Alabama and you're looking around the country, if we're going to be honest, why would Marcus Freeman be one of your top 5 to 6 candidates? That also doesn't make sense. I think there's maybe reasons why his name was thrown into the mix. I think there's certain social reasons why some people feel the need to throw certain coaches into the conversations. But the fact of the matter is Marcus Freeman's 19-7 the last 2 years. He's gone 9-4 and 10-3. He's finished 18th and 14th in the top 25. That doesn't scream Alabama resume. Now, do I think Marcus Freeman could win at Alabama? I think Marcus Freeman can win anywhere. I do. I think he's got the chops to win anywhere. He's got to prove it. Certainly has to prove it. But I have zero doubt that Marcus Freeman is going to win at Notre Dame. I have zero doubt that Marcus Freeman could win at Alabama if he wanted to. I have no doubt he could win at Clemson or USC or Oklahoma or Texas if he wanted to. I have no doubt about that because of his ability to recruit, the things he believes in a football program, for the most part, are things that you need to be as a champion. To be a champion, can he get all those things implemented? Still a wait and see type of situation. And that's exactly where I'm at. Like, if you want to take a chance on a really good recruiter, go get James Franklin. If that's your objective, go get James Franklin. James Franklin has a much longer track record. You kind of know who he is. We've seen what he can be. I just don't see why Marcus Freeman would be a candidate but for Alabama. I think that anyone that's smart and is truly in the game would be smart to at least consider him if there's any kind of initial conversations of putting a list together, because I do think people see his potential. Nick Saban, from what I'm told, is going to have a say in what's going on here. He's probably like, Notre Dame's become a lot harder to beat in recent years than they were before on the recruiting trail I'm referring to. So, those are things that you're going to have conversations about. And so I just don't think this is anything for Notre Dame fans to worry about. And it won't be the last time. I promise you, it's not going to be the last time that Marcus Freeman's name is being thrown around as a candidate for a head coaching job. It's not the first time I've heard this rumors about him this offseason. And next year, and as he wins more and more and more, you're going to hear his name thrown around more and more and more and more. And I'll tell you when you can start worrying about Marcus Freeman leaving Notre Dame. There's 2 things that could happen, in my opinion, that could cause Marcus Freeman to leave Notre Dame. Number 1, he wins. If Marcus Freeman wins a national championship at Notre Dame, I could see a situation where he has a decision to make. I either try to win again at Notre Dame, and depending on the circumstance of his program, like if there's a certain job comes open, an NFL job, whatever, he's won a title, he's losing a lot of kids, there's things going on where maybe there's a downward trajectory. I could see him leaving in that situation. Or he could just say, hey, I've climbed to the mountaintop here. I'm ready for the next challenge, whether it's NFL or whatever the case may be. I could see something along those lines, especially since, he didn't have a chance to really make it in the NFL as a player because of injuries. There could be something maybe in the back, and this is 100% speculation, just so we're clear. So 100% Brian Driscoll's opinion. This isn't something I've heard from anyone I've talked to. If he wins a championship at Notre Dame, I could see like, hey, I played for championships in college as a player. I was at a great program. I went, I've now won a championship as a coach. I've been on big stages as a coach. But I just never was able to make the NFL because of the injuries that happened. Or I think it was like a heart issue or something along those lines. And so I could see something like that. Again, pure speculation, just knowing him as a competitor. But I could also see him saying, okay, we got one. Let's go get another one. The second scenario in which I would see Marcus Freeman leaving is if Notre Dame is no longer supporting Marcus Freeman. If Notre Dame is no longer committed to winning a championship, to competing for a championship, to doing the things that are needed to compete. What does that mean? That does not mean lowering the academic standards. It doesn't mean, okaying, paying players to come here out of high school. It doesn't mean, making things that I believe are not true to who Notre Dame is be true. I don't think that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about he keeps losing assistant coaches because Notre Dame won't pony up. Notre Dame's given the team ridiculously challenging schedules, and he has no say in it. Notre Dame's not doing what it needs to do to commit to facility upgrades that are genuinely needed. They're not working with them in the transfer portal, or as the landscape in college football changes, they're not willing to change with it as much as they can while staying true to who they are as an institution. So basically, we've seen this happen in the past. We saw Lou Holtz had to battle against the administration a lot. We saw, during the Weiss era before Jack Swarbrick came along. I don't know that there was a huge appetite to really do what it takes to compete for championships. And Charlie, fought a lot of those battles. Charlie fought a lot of the battles that then benefited Brian Kelly and Jack Swarbrick when they took over. So if you get to a situation where that's true, where Notre Dame's just not doing what it takes to be competitive, then I could see Marcus Freeman leaving. Here's the thing about that, though. Maybe a year ago, we could have said, well, maybe that's a little bit of a concern right now. But when you look at what's going on right now at Notre Dame and what they've done this offseason, there is no doubt that right now Notre Dame is doing a lot to help build up the Notre Dame football program. A lot. You look at what they're doing with Mike Denbrock. He's going to be the most likely the highest paid offensive coordinator in college football. The financial commitments that were made, I still haven't gotten numbers, but I've been told, trust me, Notre Dame is paying top dollar to make this move happen. Not just with paying the assistant coach and Lauren Landau, but also, the facility upgrades and the staff upgrades they've promised to make. This isn't just about we're going to pay Lauren Landau X amount of dollars and that's our commitment. That's not what this is about. This is about our commitment to Lauren Landau is about we're going to pay him, but we're going to expand the staff. We're going to upgrade facilities, all these type of things. There's a lot that's going into why the different ways that Notre Dame is being supportive of the football program right now. There's commitments coming to the Goog. Next couple of years, you're probably going to see that start to happen. There's a lot going on right now with the NIL stuff, the NIL sphere. Notre Dame is as best as I think they can in most areas, not all, but most areas, is really stepping up to the plate and giving Marcus Freeman the support he needs. Was that always the case? Doesn't really matter. What I believe to be true based on a lot of my intel and a lot of my sources, thank you, is that it is true now. And ultimately that's what matters, is that it's true now. So the things that could happen to me that could force Marcus Freeman leaving Notre Dame are just not things that are just true right now. He hasn't won the way that I believe he truly wants to win at Notre Dame. Like, it's not just that I think Marcus Freeman wants to win a championship. I mean, all competitors do. I believe Marcus Freeman has a burning desire to win at Notre Dame. And that's why he and the people around him responded the way they did when the I believe false rumors about Texas A&M started to come around. It's also why I didn't report on it at the time and haven't talked about it, because I don't believe it was true. I'm making the point now about it to simply point out, number one, the reaction to that was really interesting from people around him, and the way that they reacted to it was very interesting, and in a good way if you're a Notre Dame fan. But it's also to point out to not believe a lot of the stuff that comes out, just because a lot of it's just like, I have a friend of mine who is connected to some boosters in SEC school, and he was telling me a story about how the AD was telling all these people that they were going after this guy, and this guy, but in reality, none of those guys were candidates. He was going after this other guy. I don't know why he felt the need to lie to money people. I don't know what the deal was, but that's what he did. You see that stuff all the time, and that's why I was glad that the AD at Alabama said, if you don't hear from me, it's not true. And that's why some of the stuff you're hearing, you're just like, well, I think there's some truth to that, but I'm not sure. But here's what I know, man. Notre Dame's doing a lot right now to support Marcus Freeman. And Notre Dame is as close to being on that stage as they've been in a long time. Marcus Freeman knows it. People at Notre Dame know it. We all know it. Can he get them to that next step? I don't know. I really don't know. We'll find that out, because we won't know until he gets there. But it's an exciting time to be at Notre Dame, and I think the head coach knows it. And look, when you look at how he has engaged this offseason, he is a man on a mission. And I'm trying to think of that's the best way I can say it without using coarse language, but he has, like, the things that have gone on this offseason have not kind of taken that edge off of Marcus Freeman. It has not taken that I'm kind of ticked off thing away from him. He is still very much a man on a mission. He is not like, okay, well, I got this and this and this. I'm comfortable now. No, it's like, okay, we got this. Now let's go do this. Now let's go do this. Now let's create this thing. And a lot of it is culture driven, which is something we talked about yesterday. So I'm very encouraged by things I've seen this offseason, not just from the Marcus Freeman, but also from the Notre Dame administration. Look, we have complained for years, y'all, and rightfully so, because it was deserved, that the University of Notre Dame put too many stumbling blocks in front of the program for them to be competitive. Then when you combine the self-inflicted stumbling blocks that were placed in front of the football program by the head football coach and other things within the football program by the previous staff, you just kind of felt you got to the point where it just was you were reserved to the fact that Notre Dame was never really truly going to get there. They should have, they could have. That's what I always fought against, but they weren't going to because of decisions that were made on the academic, financial side over here, but then also by the football side over here. This is the most unified I have seen the University of Notre Dame and a support system around a common objective as I've seen since I've really been involved with the team. I started covering the team on a daily basis in 2010. I started kind of being engaged with some things back in like 06 and 07 about where things were. I know a lot of people that were part of the Lou Holtz tenure. I know people that were part of the Ty tenure. And I'm just telling, I won't say who, but, you know, a year ago, I had a discussion with someone who was at Notre Dame in the past who was basically like, yeah, they're not going to be able to afford to make this kind of move. And then a year later, that person obviously realizes that they are serious about making that kind of move. So there's just a, you know, there's just a, I'm just trying not to get too excited. But part of the reason that I'm more optimistic about Notre Dame winning is not just Notre Dame, guys. It's not. It is this notion that they're actually doing what it takes finally. And in my opinion, knowing what I know about Marcus Freeman, there's no way that he's leaving or even thinking about leaving when all of this is going on. So that's why I wanted to discuss that and get that out of there. This probably won't be the last time. We have heard a lot of rumblings about who the replacement is going to be for Nick Saban. Last night I was being told it was going to be Dan Lanning. This morning I'm being told it's going to be Steve Sarkisian. Who's it going to be actually going to be? Is Sark going to take the job? Is he going to not take the job? You know, does he end up saying no and then they find somebody else? I don't know what's going on, right? But it's going to probably be a splashy hire. And when that happens, what does that mean for that next replacement? So let's just say hypothetically that Steve Sarkisian takes the Alabama job, just for argument's sake. I don't know if he is or isn't. I do know that Bama wants him, but I don't know if he takes it. Okay, well then the Texas job comes open. You're probably going to hear rumblings about Marcus. You're probably going to hear Marcus Freeman's name thrown out for that. Don't buy into it. Then let's say, Kalen, I'm sorry to do it to you, Detroit Hunter, but this is something I've heard. If Sark leaves, a top target for Texas is going to be Kalen DeBoer. Okay, well, you're probably going to hear something about Marcus Freeman thrown into that one as well. And then, you know, maybe it's not, maybe it's somebody else. Maybe Mike Norvell goes to Texas, and then you're going to hear, or maybe Mike Norvell goes to Alabama. Then you're going to hear Marcus Freeman's name linked to Florida State. I'm just telling you, this is going to continue to happen. Don't buy it. And of course, we on our end will do our due diligence to find out if there's any truth to it. And if there is, we'll tell you. But I truly believe from the bottom of my heart that a big reason why Freeman's not really going to be a legitimate candidate, on top of the fact that there are just other guys with more established resumes. I was having a discussion with somebody today, and we were talking about the when Marcus Freeman was hired, that he was under the impression or the belief that Marcus Freeman didn't get that Luke Fickell didn't get the job because of the timing, because of the playoff, because this was in the playoff. And I told him, I said, look, I know that that's what was out there. But guys, you all all the people that were on this channel, some of the people that were around at that time, you guys know, I said at the time on the message board, that's not true. He's not the top candidate. Marcus Freeman is. There are some questions that need to be answered about Marcus Freeman during the interview process. But I'm telling y'all, and I will hold true to this today, that going into that process, Marcus Freeman was the guy that Jack Swarbrick wanted to hire. He just needed to get some other people on board because of the lack of experience. But also he needed to make sure through the process that Marcus Freeman was the right guy. And so he did his due diligence of talking to Luke Fickell and Dave Clawson and Matt Campbell and some other people that I've heard he reached out to, because you have to do your due diligence when you're dealing with someone who's never been a coach before. But during the entire process, Marcus Freeman checked off all the boxes with Jack Swarbrick. And that's why that move was made. If Notre Dame wanted Luke Fickell, I promise you, they would have waited till after the college football playoff for Luke Fickell. They would have sacrificed the recruiting class. They would have let Marcus Freeman walk to LSU or wherever else he would have gone. They would have waited on Luke Fickell. The reason Marcus Freeman is the head coach at Notre Dame is because that's who Jack Swarbrick wanted to hire. But you still live in this universe where people really believe that Luke Fickell was the leading candidate. I think that came more from Luke Fickell's side. But I'm just telling you, from the entire process, even to late in the year, I wrote an article basically saying that that Marcus Freeman needs to be the next head coach at Notre Dame. And that was two parts. That was part my belief that he needed to be the next head coach, but also partly because you were already hearing rumblings that whether it was going to be this offseason or the next offseason, Brian Kelly was not long for Notre Dame. And that part of the reason Jack Swarbrick really wanted and was actively involved, and Brian Kelly played an important role too. I don't want to I've banged Brian Kelly for the not being really involved in the hires of Chip Long and Mike Elko. And that's what I've been told by all my good sources. But he definitely made a move to bring in Marcus Freeman. He saw the value in that and played a role in that. I don't want to take that away from him. But I'm just telling you right now that that's someone that Jack Swarbrick also definitely had his eye on. Because what you have to understand about Jack Swarbrick, he does not just sit back and let things happen. He's got his own list of candidates. I promise you, if Jack Swarbrick hadn't announced his retirement, I promise you had a list of candidates he was going to go to if Marcus Freeman did walk. Like, he is on top of that kind of stuff. And Marcus Freeman was the guy that he saw as the future head football coach at Notre Dame for a million reasons. I think the only thing that gave him any kind of pause as far as hiring him right away in 2022 was the fact that I don't believe he necessarily anticipated it happening as quickly as he did. Now, I've been told that by the middle of the year, both sides knew they were moving on. But I'm referring to when he hired Marcus Freeman, I don't think he anticipated next offseason I'm promoting him. I think the hope was that he could have a couple years under Brian Kelly, then Kelly leaves, then Marcus takes over. So I think that was the only pause. So this is a guy that they believe in at Notre Dame. This isn't a guy they settled on because they couldn't get this coach, that coach, or the other coach. There was a belief in Marcus Freeman. And he has shown the administration enough in his 2 years to say, yeah, there's things he's got to prove. There's improvements he's got to make. But this guy has shown that he's got the chops to do certain things in Notre Dame that we haven't seen before. I've talked about it already. Talent acquisition, all those type of things. And what the school sees, here's another little tidbit for you. We went through, and we spent weeks doing this, talking to parents and the players, trying to get accurate grade point averages for the Notre Dame recruiting class of 2023. And this is when Peyton Bowen was still in the class, and Jaden Lamar was still in the class, and Keon Keeley was still in the class. And we went through, and this is before Brandon Hillman was in the class. And we went through and got the grade point average. And I think about the talent. Keeley 5-star, Bowen 5-star. Kenny Minchie wasn't in the class yet either. But I'm trying to think, like Jeremiah Love, we found out his GPA, even though he was not in the class yet, but we thought he was going to be. Jaden Greathouse, Braylon James. I mean, there were some highly ranked guys in the class. Charles Jagasol. And I believe the lowest GPA of any of those kids was a 3.2. Here's the point to that. If you're Notre Dame, you're loving this, because not only is this guy going out and getting big-time football players, but him and Chad Bowden, they're bringing in legitimate student athletes to Notre Dame, something that people said you can't do. That's another reason, because Marcus Freeman understands that the whole shopping down a different aisle thing has some merit to it, but what Brian Kelly meant by different aisle was a little bit different. Marcus Freeman says, I'm going down the same aisle that Alabama's going down. I'm going down the same aisle that Georgia's going down. I'm going down the same aisle that Ohio State and Clemson and Oregon and Texas are going down. But here's the difference. There are some things in this aisle that we can't get. But I promise you there's big-time additions in this aisle, but we got to fight for them. We got to work for them. And Marcus Freeman's willing to fight for him. Chad Bowden's willing to fight for him. Mike Mickens is willing to fight for him. Al Washington's willing to fight for him. Dylan McCullough's willing to fight for him. Mike Denbrock will be willing to fight for him. And the school loves that. They see this. They see that Marcus Freeman is tearing down all these erected statues of excuse making that were built up at Notre Dame for the last 30 years by everyone other than Charlie Weiss. He's just tearing them down, just laying siege to them. That's bullcrap. That's false. That's a cop-out. That's an excuse. We're going to show you that it can be done. And Notre Dame sees that. And that's partly why there's a commitment too, because these are still business people. They're not going to commit millions and millions of dollars to a coach they don't believe has what it takes to win. But they believe that Freeman has that. And you combine that with the new TV deal, the new apparel deal. This is a school that is showing a greater willingness to spend money on coaching staff, facilities, a support staff, collective NIL stuff. There's a lot of money being thrown into the Notre Dame program right now, which is why you're not seeing Notre Dame losing starters to the portal the way that other people are. You're just not. And it's an exciting thing to be a part of, in my opinion. And so that's another big reason why you're seeing the support at Notre Dame, and that support is a big reason why I don't think Marcus Freeman has any desire to go anywhere. And whether that's Bama, Texas, Florida State, Washington, or Ohio State. I think Marcus Freeman is bought in to being University of Notre Dame. I expect Jim Harbaugh to leave. I'll talk about that again later. That's going to create another group of dominoes that you're going to hear Marcus Freeman's name thrown around in. I'm just saying I would be shocked if any of that was true, based on all the things I've heard over the last several months about where Marcus Freeman's head is at, what he is envisioning, and just what he wants to accomplish, and the fact that he doesn't want to just win a championship. Marcus Freeman, from everything I've been told for months before all this stuff came up, is he wants to win a championship here. He understands the uniqueness of doing it here. And that's a very, very important thing. And it's why you're just not going to see his name, in my opinion, legitimately linked to any jobs. You're going to see it happen, though, a lot where his name is here's the candidates for this job. And I'll be shocked if it happens in the current circumstance of what's going on at Notre Dame. So that's my take on Marcus Freeman and Alabama and all this coaching portal stuff. And I'm hoping that I can alleviate some of the angst that I know some of you are going to have when the dominoes start to fall and Marcus Freeman's name gets thrown around again. This will again, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm pretty confident that this won't be the last job that Marcus Freeman's name is mentioned for this offseason. I'm hoping that I can really alleviate some of your angst to know that most of the 99 times out of 100, when his name's thrown around, that's not coming from Marcus Freeman. That may be a school likes Marcus Freeman and wants to pursue Marcus Freeman, but it's not going to be a situation, in my opinion, from what I know and what I've been told, that that he's looking, right? I mean, somebody can check you out, but if you're a married man, now you can check me out all you want, but I'm committed to this. I have no interest in that. Can't stop people from looking, but you can make sure that you're not looking. And right now, I don't believe he's looking. And so that's something that Notre Dame fans hopefully can take a little bit of encouragement from. We're going to go to talk about the portal next, folks. But before we do me a favor, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, share this podcast. If you're listening via podcast platform, do us a solid and give us a 5-star review. And if you have not done so, folks, you got to sign up for the message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. With a lot of great conversation going on right now. We had a staff meeting today about some things we have planned for this year on the message board and things we can do one of our plans, we haven't solidified everything yet, but what can we do to make that premium product better? So we want to make all of our content better. And we're going to have a lot of things going on this year that's going to make our YouTube platform better, our podcast platform better, and the content better there. But we always want to make sure that the premium message board is where a lot of the best stuff is going and unique stuff is going. So there's always going to be things there that you're just not going to get anywhere else at Irish Breakdown. You're not going to get on the main site. You're not going to get on the podcast. You're not going to get on the YouTube channel. So there's definitely value to that. If someone's like, well, if I listen to the podcast and I read all the articles, what do I really need the message board for? I promise you, there's a lot of value to that you're just not getting anywhere else. And I don't mean anywhere else like we're better than this side or that site. That's not what I want to get into. I don't know what's out there. I know what we're doing at Irish Breakdown. I just mean as far as things that you're going to get that you can't find on any other Irish Breakdown platforms. So definitely value to being on the IB message board. Well, part 2 of today's show is going to talk about the transfer portal. And again, it's a very interesting time to be at Notre Dame because Notre Dame has got to wade through all the insane changes that have happened in the last 2 years differently than everybody else. Notre Dame has to engage the transfer portal. They can't engage it like everyone else. You're going to see so many more kids, in my opinion, a prediction I have, way more kids are going to be going through this process and not getting degrees than is already happening because of the constant transfers. It's impossible to actually graduate college when you're at 4 schools in 5 years or 3 schools in 4 years. It's very challenging. And I know that for a fact because I went through one transfer process as a player, but then when I wanted to get into coaching, I wasn't done with my degree yet because of my initial transfer. So I had to end up transferring to Wittenberg and finishing my degree at Wittenberg and then Wright State, transferring those credits back to Salisbury in order to get my degree. But it was done in like 5 years. It took longer because of all that, because not every school is going to take all your credits. And that's what's going to be happening to a lot of these young men. And it's an unfortunate situation. Notre Dame has to be responsible about, okay, we're going to bring this kid in, but can we make sure that this kid is going to get a degree if he's an undergraduate student athlete? That's got to be something Notre Dame takes value in. And honestly, it should absolutely be something they take value in. And so when I look at, how they've got to engage that, yes, they need to work with the football program more to make sure that they can kind of go after a bigger pool of student athletes than what they were before. But Notre Dame's never going to be able to go after the same number of students that a Florida State is or an Alabama is or an Ohio State might be able to do and willing to do in the transfer portal. But they got to work with them on it. The NIL stuff, you've got to be careful because Notre Dame doesn't want to get into this whole thing of we're going to promise you X amount of dollars in order to come here. They will present, hey, here's the opportunities for you if you come here. Here's what the collective, is able to do. But you've got to, we're just not going to offer you $2 million to come here. That's just not how Notre Dame is going to be from what I know in all situations when it comes to the transfer portal. So that's what makes what they've done in the transfer portal this year even more impressive. Marcus Freeman has very much said, we're going to engage in the transfer portal. We're going to engage in that. We're going to engage in NIL. We're going to embrace NIL, but we're also going to stay true to being a program that is very much a believer in we're going to build through high school. And we're going to build through high school recruiting. We're going to bring in high school recruits. And then the portal for us is going to be that, okay, here's what our team is. Here's where we need to upgrade the most. Here's where we can upgrade the most. Here's what's out there for us to go get. And so what you saw this offseason was my concern was that the needs that Notre Dame had were at positions that have 2 concerns for me. One is there are a lot of skill positions, and skill players have a tendency, ones that you would want, have a tendency to be guys that are kind of looking for different things than what maybe a Notre Dame is looking for. And so you're like, well, are they going to be able to engage in that? Well, fortunately for Notre Dame, at two of those positions, quarterback and wide receiver, there was a lot of guys that jumped in the portal, especially wide receiver. And they were very fortunate they could find three guys now, but early on two guys that were able to be a part of that. And then they hit some other positions as well. And I'm gonna bring up just kind of the portal class as of right now, and you can see the 8 portal guys. But Notre Dame was in a situation where they needed receivers in the portal, especially. I mean, that was true before they lost, Rico Flores and Braylon James and Chris Tyree. They were already looking at the portal. When those guys left, it became an even greater need to go into the portal. And so then you see guys like Chris Mitchell jump in, and Bo Collins and Jaden Harrison and Jamal Banks and a lot of different players, Jeremiah Hunter, a lot of guys that Notre Dame was kind of mentioned with. And fortunately, Notre Dame was able to go out and get Chris Mitchell, which I thought was a great pickup. Notre Dame was about to, Bo Collins jumps in. Notre Dame jumps all over him. And, he was a guy that we all, at least I did. I don't know about y'all. I shouldn't say we all, because I don't know who y'all wanted, but he was a guy that I wanted out of high school. I like Bo. I thought Bo Collins made a mistake going to Clemson. And I've said this for years, because I just didn't feel like Clemson's system and the way that they use receivers really fit Bo's skill set. That was kind of my thing with about why I didn't think that was the greatest decision. But I also understood why he did it. I mean, if you're looking at Clemson at the time when Bo committed, I mean, they had won 2 championships in recent years. They'd put a bunch of receivers into the first and second round. I mean, they and even before they started winning championships, I mean, you think about some of the receivers that Clemson put into the NFL. I mean, Sammy Watkins was a guy they put in the NFL. DeAndre Hopkins was a guy that they put into the NFL. I mean, Clemson was putting a lot of guys into the NFL. I'm actually going to pull this up and just kind of give you some of the names of wide receivers that Clemson had put into the NFL in recent years. I mean, just going back to 2010, Jacoby Ford was a 4th-round draft pick. DeAndre Hopkins was looking at DeAndre. What year was DeAndre? DeAndre was a 1st-round draft pick in 2013. The next year, Sammy Watkins is the 4 overall pick. Martavis Bryant is a 4th-round pick. Then you go to Jerome Peak, who didn't even start for Clemson and was still drafted in the 7th round. You had Mike Williams as a 1st-round draft pick. Deion Kane, who was never a starter, and Ray McLeod were 6th-round draft picks. You had Hunter Renfrow as a 5th-round draft pick. He's doing stuff in the NFL. T. Higgins was a 2nd-round draft pick. Cornell Powell and Amari Rogers were 2nd and 3rd-round draft picks. Of course, he was the 2020 guys were Bo's senior year, because Bo was a 2021 kid. So 21, 22, 23, and this will be his senior year. So you're talking about Clemson putting a lot of guys in the NFL, and that doesn't even include Justin Ross, who would have been a 1st-round draft pick if not for the major neck injury that he had in college. So you understood why he did it. I just didn't think it was like him and Joseph Ngata both, I thought made mistakes going to Clemson, just because I didn't think they fit the system. So you go out and get a guy like Bo Collins, who's got a lot of ability, hasn't really had a lot of major injuries. He's had little dinks and, little things here that have cost time, but nothing structurally where like all of a sudden he's running a 4.7 now because he had a really bad knee or ankle or foot or something like that, where it really kept him from becoming the athlete that he was going to be. And so they were able to have an impact haul there. And you look at what they've done in the secondary. So when you look at the overall portal class from Notre Dame, it really, really is an outstanding class. I'm just going to kind of go through what I really like about it. And number one is, here's the biggest thing, I believe, and anyone that's been on this channel through the 2022 season into now, you guys know Ryan and I have been talking about Riley Leonard for a couple years now. I mean, I've shared the story before, but Ryan watched him, and Ryan remembered it. It was the opener against Temple in 2022, and he watched the game. He's like, this kid's really good. Then I started watching him a little bit more, and I watched him out-duel Sam Hartman and go toe-to-toe with Drake May and those kind of guys. You're like, this kid's got a lot of ability. He comes out this year, and he starts the season off really well, and then gets hurt. But this is a kid with a lot of talent that, to me, is the I wouldn't say he definitely doesn't have the highest floor in the quarterback class, but he to me has the highest ceiling in the transfer portal quarterback class. And so you're going in a different direction than you did last year, where last year you kind of felt like Sam Hartman had the highest floor. And I think that turned out to be true. Sam Hartman never got to be the productive player for Notre Dame that he was for Wake Forest. Sam Hartman was still a good football player last year. He wasn't always on top of his game, but he was a good football player for Notre Dame last year. And Notre Dame doesn't go 9-3. if Sam Hartman doesn't transfer in. They would have had a worse record, in my opinion. And so you went with a high floor guy last year. Well, Notre Dame went with in a little bit of different direction this year with Riley Leonard and the focus with him. And guys, let me tell you something. I know that there was rumblings about Will Howard and all these other guys, and Notre Dame did their due diligence because they needed to actually get Riley Leonard first, and he needed to actually jump in the portal, but they had scouted this one out, and this was their guy that basically, if he jumps in the portal, he is our target. He's the guy we want. And the reason why is because he's a very talented player, and he's a player to me that when you look at it with Notre Dame, he brings to me a lot of value from a playmaking standpoint. And that's something that Notre Dame realized very early on this year that they were lacking. They were lacking a playmaker at quarterback. They had a guy that could run an offense and was a leader and had knowledge and had experience, all those kind of things, but he wasn't a playmaker. He wasn't a guy that when things broke down, could he go make plays? And you want some examples? Go watch the Ohio State game. First drive of the game, Notre Dame goes right down the field on Ohio State, gets into the not the red zone, but they get into Notre Dame territory, deep into Notre Dame territory or Ohio State territory, facing a 4th and 1. You're like, hey, let's go for it. I love the aggressiveness of the call. You could have maybe kicked a longer field goal, but you're trying to win that game. You go for it. And so they call a pass play, didn't love it, but your quarterback gets out of the pocket. It's 4th and 1, and he doesn't hunt for the first down. He doesn't do what it takes to get to the first down. He's not a playmaker like that. You have another 4th down that doesn't get converted later in the game on 4th and 1. You look at the Clemson game where the pass game was just struggling. The receivers were injured. You had guys that weren't playing. You had guys that were playing but weren't 100%. Your quarterback was struggling throwing the football, and he just wasn't able to. He had that one draw early in the game. He had the one scramble, but there wasn't the thing where you could point to the quarterback and say, we need you to put the offense on your shoulders. He just wasn't able to do that. And they went 6 possessions in the third and fourth quarter, where they were a touchdown away and a 2-point conversion away from tying it, and they never crossed midfield. And I've said this. I don't know how Riley Leonard will be as a passer compared to Sam Hartman. I think he's got the potential to be better, but he's got a lot of work that needs to be done. We'll break some more of that down here over the next month or two as we dive into more film that's going to be on the message board, and we do a deeper dive into what this class is with Ryan and I. But I said this. Here's the one thing I could guarantee. If you go back and look at the 2023 season, I don't know what Riley Leonard's passing numbers would have looked like, but here's what I know for a fact. Again, my opinion, I should say, not a fact, but here's what I believe to be absolutely true. Notre Dame does not get stopped twice on 4th and 1 against Ohio State if Riley Leonard's your quarterback. I'm quite confident in that. And we saw that when he played against Notre Dame. As much as Notre Dame shut that offense down in the second half, Riley Leonard used his legs to take that game over and go from being down 13-0 to having a 14-13 lead for Duke. And you get excited about what he can bring from a playmaking standpoint, because if his throwing game is off, he can still make plays. That's huge. You needed proven weapons in the pass game. You went out and got them. I think Chris Mitchell has a chance to be a really good football player. I think Bo Collins is a guy that, again, I don't know that it's going to happen, but I'll just say this. It would not shock me if Bo Collins becomes a much more impactful player for Notre Dame this year than he was at Clemson. I could see him being a Miles Boykin type at Notre Dame. I think he has the skill set to do it. Is he an elite player? No, he's not an elite player, but I think he's a much better player than what we saw at Clemson. And we saw it in stretches. I think at Notre Dame, with the system that he'll be in, with the talent that'll be around him, those two things, if he can stay healthy, it's going to be the big thing for him and Deion Colzie, is if Bo can stay healthy, I could easily see him having a career year at Notre Dame and being a guy that's you look at and say, boy, I am so glad they got him. Much like Javonte Jean-Baptiste. Notre Dame had a great defense this year. Would they have had a great defense if Javonte Jean-Baptiste doesn't come? I don't think so. Was he their best player? No, but he was a very important, big-time piece to what was a great unit. And I could see Bo Collins having that role, along with Chris. Chris Mitchell is obvious. Kids put the numbers up against really good competition. Jaden Harrison, I don't care if Jaden Harrison plays a snap at wide receiver. Really don't. If he does, that's a bonus. You're talking about a kid who's a first-team All-American as a kick returner. And I was having a debate with a buddy of mine the other day, and he was upset. He loves Jadarian Price, and he was talking about how, I don't know why you're doing this. Jadarian, averaged 34 yards of return, which he did, and he's dynamic, and it's all trust. So look, I don't disagree with anything you're saying, but what I am saying is Notre Dame's anticipating Jadarian Price being a much bigger part of the offense and a much more integral, high volume touches part of the offense. I mean, if you go through a game and both Jeremiah and Jadarian both don't have at least 12 to 15 touches, either one guy just went absolutely nuts in that game and you could take him off the field, or the coaches aren't doing this whole thing right. And that's why, that's what Notre Dame has been selling to Jadarian and Jeremiah this offseason is like, it's a 1A, 1B type of thing. And so we can't ignore the fact that Jadarian is still dealing with the, coming back from the Achilles injury. And I know that modern science has changed a lot, but it hasn't changed that much when it comes to the Achilles. I've said this before, the Achilles is the old ACL where, you were going to miss a lot longer period of time. And unless you're someone who can afford some of the things that Aaron Rodgers can afford as far as experimental surgeries, and I don't even mean just afford financially, I'm more referring to if it doesn't work out, he's already 40-something and his career's over. A 19-year-old, 18-year-old kid can't take that risk. And so if there's ways where you're going to ramp up his playing time and his practice reps and his game reps and his offseason reps as a running back, is there a way to kind of take away some of that special teams workload? I think that is important because you want to still keep him fresh. And he's going to get a lot more touches next year than he got this year. And the kid only returned 10 kicks the whole year. That's it, because teams just wouldn't kick to him. So you look at it now and say, but that's not just, okay, well, it's just 10 reps over the course of a year. But think of the number of practice reps he gets where he's got to catch the ball, drive off that foot, and, try to go make a play in practice. Now you're in a situation where you can take that workload off of him and replace him with a guy who's a first-team All-American kick returner, averaged over 30 yards a kick last year, and is now in a situation where, he is, has 3 kick returns for touchdowns in his career. So you can't justify taking Jadarian Price off of the kick return game if you don't have someone that you think could be as good or at least close to as good. And Jaden Harrison brings you that. Look at the other side of the ball. RJ Oben, to me, Ryan and I talked about this the other day. Is he going to be as good as Javonte Jean-Baptiste? No idea. I have no idea. But what I know is I liked his film more watching him at Duke than I did Javonte Jean-Baptiste at Ohio State. Now, Javonte came here and put in the work and had the attitude to have an awesome season for Notre Dame. And I don't know that Notre Dame could have been the defense they were if he doesn't come. That's how important he was. I don't know if RJ can match that. I'm just saying at the same stage of what they had done, the production is significantly greater from RJ, and the film from RJ is better as well. And that matters to me. You know that there's at least a floor there to work with if you're Notre Dame. And then you've got Josh Burnham and a lot of other things. We'll break down the overall depth chart later. But RJ Oben is a veteran player that can play field end, can play Viper, and adds a lot of value. Jordan Clark is a nickel. Ryan likes him a little bit more than I do. We both think he's a good football player. He adds value to a position where you lost your starter. So he has a chance to replace that guy. We talked about Rod Hurd yesterday from Northwestern. He immediately walks in the door and makes you better at the safety position. Because if Adon Schuler is good enough to beat him out, then you're going to be great at safety. If Adon's not quite there yet, then you have a guy like Rod Hurd that can help bridge the gap. Adon can be your number 3. He's still going to play 20, 30 snaps a game. Adon will, because they always rotate. If you're in the top 4 at safety, you're probably going to play. If you're in the top 3 at safety, you are absolutely playing. And there's no doubt about that. And that won't change this year. And so there's going to be plenty of opportunities for Adon. But if he's just not quite ready for starting snaps, then, guess what? You've got a guy like Rod Hurd who can help fill that void. And so, that's kind of where I'm at. And with that, and then, of course, Mitch Jeter, who's the polar opposite of what Spencer Schrader was. Doesn't have that monster leg, but he's a guy that is about as clutch and money as you can get as a kick return, as a place kicker. And so I like that. So let's just kind of talk about, I mean, guys, just look at that list, right? I mean, you're talking about, you got an impact. All of this is potential, right? Because none of these guys are guaranteed to do at Notre Dame what they did at their previous schools. None of them. But the potential that you've added is you've added a potential impact quarterback to your team. You've added at least 2 potential impact wide receivers to your team with starting talent. You've added an impact kick returner who, for all we know, because I used the example from the Charlie Jones kid a couple years ago. I wanted Charlie Jones at Notre Dame, but the only reason I wanted Charlie Jones at Notre Dame because I thought he'd be a really good punt returner. I had no idea he was going to go to the next school and be a 1,000-yard wide receiver like he was at Purdue. I didn't see that one coming, and that was great. I mean, that was huge. What I'm saying with Jaden Harrison is maybe he has a breakout like that too. I have no idea. I'm telling you right now, as a kick returner, at the very least as a kick returner, he adds impact potential. And then anything he gives you at wide receiver is a bonus. RJ Oben is a guy that's got close to 20 career sacks. Actually, let me look up what his actual numbers are because I do believe he's close to 20 career sacks. I think that number is accurate, but I don't want to give you guys bad information. Okay, he's close to 20 tackles for loss. He's got 18.5 tackles for loss, 13.5 career sacks. He's got an interception, 4 forced fumbles. He's a guy that brings a lot of value. If you look at his Pro Football Focus numbers the last couple of years from a pass rushing standpoint, I'm going to bring those up here too to show you those. I've looked at those before as well. He's a guy this year for Duke that had 27 pressures this past season, 13 hits on the quarterback. You compare that to what Notre Dame had this past season. So Javonte Jean-Baptiste this season for Notre Dame had 32 pressures on the quarterback. Let me see here. Javonte had 38. They've updated the thing. 38 pressures, and he had 16 hits plus sacks on the quarterback on 306 pass rushes. RJ Oben this year had 27 pressures, 13 hits on the quarterback on only 243 pass rushes. So that's about 2 to 2.5 games fewer pass rushes worth of pass rushes from RJ Oben compared to what Javonte did and what he did. And then in 2022, RJ was even more productive. RJ had 319 pass rush attempts, which is close to what Javonte had. And then you see the pass rush numbers were very similar, 37 pressures at that point in time. So he's a guy that has shown his ability to be a very productive pass rusher in college. And if he starts, you're going to have a pretty good pass rusher there. He's got to improve his run defense, setting the edge. He wasn't used that way a lot at Duke. That's something that I think needs to get better. His part of his game that needs to get better. But the pass rush part, he's going to bring a lot of value to the table. And by the way, in 2021, he had 29 pressures that season. So this is a kid that's had really good production as a pass rusher the last 3 years. And so you have value there. You've got Jordan Clark, who's played a ton of football at Arizona State. Very experienced, smart, heady player, quality athlete. Like I said, played a ton of football. And then you've got Rod Hurd, who comes to Notre Dame with like 194 career tackles. And the other thing I like too is you've got one guy that came from the group of 5, a pretty good group of 5 school in Jaden Harrison. You have another kid that came from a group of 5 in Chris Mitchell. But the production, the success they had at that level was outstanding. As I said, Jaden Harrison was a first-team All-American kick returner this year, was second in the nation in kick return average, and was second in the nation in kick return touchdowns this season. And then when you look at Chris Mitchell at Florida International, he didn't have a whole lot of help on offense. That kid, they averaged 20.1 points per game. Their quarterbacks only passed for, on the season, 2,752 yards in 12 touchdowns. That's it. But here's the thing. He had most of that production. So for a team that only had 2,700 passing yards and only completed 220 passes on the season, Chris Mitchell had 64 catches for 1,118 yards and 6 of the 12 touchdown receptions this season. Like, that's outstanding production. So, yes, you're coming from a smaller level, but you're talking about a guy that had 6 catches for 157 yards against Arkansas on the road against Arkansas, 8 catches for 116 yards against Western Kentucky, 5 catches for 109 yards against Jacksonville State. It's a good football team. 4 catches for 89 yards against Liberty, a team that played in the Fiesta Bowl. So he had production against the better teams in the schedule. And he did all that production with only catching 1 pass for 2 yards in the season opener. So you're talking about a kid that he was group of 5, but you're bringing in a group of 5 first-team All-American, not just group of 5 All-American, but overall All-American, and a kid who had over 60 catches and 1,100 yards and 6 touchdowns on an offense that wasn't that good. Imagine if he's playing in an offense where you can't just focus on stopping him. You've got to focus on stopping Bo Collins and Jaden Greathouse and Jordan Faison and Deion Colsey and Jaden Thomas and Mitchell Evans and Eli Raritan and Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price and Cooper Flanagan and all these. And then you've got a quarterback that can run. It just starts getting excited about what he could be. You know, you talk about, Rod Hurd, it's a Power 5 guy, all honorable mention, all Big Ten players. So, Notre Dame's not taking a lot of flyers on this portal class, and that's what I like. There's a lot of legitimate upside. There's some NFL talent in this group, especially quarterback. Ryan has said before he had every he had every thought that RJ Oben was going to be going pro, not going to Notre Dame. And Florida State made a hard run at RJ Oben as well. And we know that they have a big needed defensive end also in what they look for. So you have to be excited about what Notre Dame added in the portal. Look, last year's portal class was good. It was. You had Sam Hartman, Caleb Smith. You had Spencer Schrader, Javonte Jean-Baptiste, Thomas Harper. You had Antonio Carter. Those were all solid players. There's a lot to like there. But the upside is so much greater. Caleb Smith is number 3 of the 3 if you talk about just the pure receivers. He's not the same kind of player as Chris Mitchell and Bo Collins. Not even close to the same kind of player that Chris Mitchell and Bo Collins were. You talk about RJ Oben and Javonte Jean-Baptiste. We'll see how RJ plays, but coming in, there's much greater career production for RJ Oben than there was for Javonte Jean-Baptiste. And you can't ignore that. You look at the secondary. Thomas Harper is a very talented player, had a lot of production. Jordan Clark can match that production and exceed that production. And the reason why is because he's been healthy. Where one of the issues that Thomas Harper had is he was banged up. He did miss a chunk of the previous season with the shoulder injury. And he was able to stay relatively healthy at Notre Dame. And so it's not about he wasn't a good player. I thought Thomas Harper was an excellent player for Notre Dame this year. It's more so about looking at it from the standpoint of you're getting proven commodities to replace guys that were proven commodities or effective players. You lose Thomas Harper, you replace him with Jordan Clark. You lose Javonte Jean-Baptiste, you're replacing him with RJ Oben, established players. You lose Rico Flores and Chris Tyree, and you replace them with better players, more productive players, more proven players. And that's what has me excited about what this portal class can add to Notre Dame, on top of the fact that Freeman's first full class is now going to be sophomores, and he's bringing in a second class, which we think is even better than the first class. There's a lot to be excited about at Notre Dame, and the portal class is a big, big reason for that. So we're going to move on to part 3 here in a second. But before we do, folks, just a reminder, do us a favor, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, share this podcast, give us a 5-star review. We would greatly, greatly appreciate that. And then, of course, sign up for the message board at boards.irishbreakdown.com. So part 3 of today's show is just kind of me sharing my thoughts on just what's coming right now in college football and even pro football to a degree. It's almost kind of hard to grasp what happened yesterday. When you look at just what happened in coaching yesterday. I mean, you have the college level, Nick Saban leaves. He retires. In the NFL, you talk about Bill Belichick retires. What did he win? 7 Super Bowls, something crazy like that. I think it was 7, 6, maybe. Let me look it up. I think it was 7 because Brady won 7, right? So you're talking about a guy that in his coaching career won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's see here. Give me 1 second, everybody. Let me find this information. Yeah, 8-time Super Bowl champion. Some of those were as assistant coaches. So, no, did he win 8 Super Bowls as a coach? So let me see here. They won in 01, 03, 04. Yeah, 6 as the head coach. And then 14, 16, and 18, right? And then Brady's 7th was with the Buccaneers. That's right. So he's got that won 6 Super Bowls, more than any coach in history. Won 2 more Super Bowls as an assistant coach. Unfortunately, I remember one of those because he was against the Broncos, which I'm still not super thrilled about, by the way. But you could argue the greatest coach to ever do it, right? He's not at he's gone. He's not with the Patriots anymore. And the place where he had all that success, he's gone. Pete Carroll won a Super Bowl, almost won a second Super Bowl, won 1.5 national championship college football. I mean, a Hall of Famer, and he's out. So just in 24 hours, you have these legends that are just out, all for different reasons. Some guys left on their own. Others were told you can't be here anymore, even if you wanted to. And then I believe, this is my belief, and I know a lot of people that share this, that believe this as well, based on the intel that we've all received. I think it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that Jim Harbaugh is going to leave. And so you're talking about Saban's gone, Harbaugh's gone. There's rumblings about Kirby Smart might interview the Falcons. I don't know how much I believe that. That would surprise me, but you're hearing it about the frustration. I've heard about the frustrations he's had. I've heard for a while. You've got all these different things kind of going on. Is Dabo ever going to be the same? Urban Meyer's not in coaching anymore. He's been out for a few years, but he's not in it. A lot of the coaches that kind of dominated the sport for most of my life are just not in the game anymore. And here's why that matters, because these programs aren't going to be the same. That doesn't mean they're not going to still be really good. Doesn't mean Alabama can't still compete for championships. But with all due respect, whoever replaces Nick Saban's not Nick Saban, right? So, if a guy comes in and in 10 years wins 2 national titles, that's not as good as Nick Saban. And so you look at Michigan, and the guy that built that program up, I think, is going to leave. You've got Urban Meyer gone. So, I mean, for over the course of 10 years, almost every title, exception of a couple, Urban won it in 14, Saban won it in 15, Dabo won it in 16, Saban won it in 17, Dabo won it in 18, Orgeron won it in 19, Saban's back to wing it in 2020. I mean, so you're talking about, 3 Hall of Famers, 2 of them are gone. One of them is in a program where, will he be able to get that program back on track? We'll find out. And so to me, you look at it and you're just like, the game's changing. The game's changing a lot. And you've got all these things happening in college football. You've got conference realignment. You've got the expansion of the 12-team playoff. You've got all these different things that are happening in the game. And you just start asking yourself, like, at least I do, I'm speaking for myself here, what does this mean for Notre Dame? And the biggest thing is, I don't know what it means for Notre Dame. I have no idea as far as how it will play out for Notre Dame. But here's what I absolutely know. This is a window for Notre Dame. You have Alabama has been slowly descending in recent years. And when I mean descending, it means from the dominant program to now they're one of the 6 or 7 best programs. Now that descent to me continues with Saban being gone. Part of it depends on who they hire. If they hire Sark, I think there's some potential there for them to kind of maybe be better than what they've been at least the last couple of years. We'll see. If they miss out on Sark and Dan Lanning, now you wonder where they're going to turn. And will that hire be able to be overly effective? Could they really take a step back? Florida's not the same program it used to be. Josh Heupel's doing some nice things at Tennessee, but they're further behind than Notre Dame is right now. Georgia's obviously has been a great program for the last 4 years, can they continue that or not? I think that's a fair question. And when I mean continue, I don't mean are they going to be a title contender again? Of course they will. I mean, Kirby's recruiting too well, and he's too good of a football coach. But my thing is they've looked a lot different as a team in the non-Todd Monken years than they looked in the Todd Monken years. I think that's not really debatable. So yes, they're going to be a dominant title contender most years over the next 5-6 years, no doubt. But will they be that dominant team that just runs through college football over a 2-year period like they did the last couple of years? I don't know. Ohio State, that's another interesting program. They're still very good, but are they as good as they were in the Urban years? No, they haven't been. Are they even as good as they were the first couple of years of Ryan Day? No, they haven't been. Do they get back on track? Do the moves that we anticipate Dan Mullen making this offseason, are they just like rearranging the chairs in the Titanic, right? Or the deck chairs on the Titanic is the old expression? Or are they going to be things that actually save the program and get the program back on track? We're going to find out. But the point is, while they are down, you have a chance to close the gap even further. That's the opportunity in front of Notre Dame. And I do believe that the Notre Dame coaches and recruiting staff know what's in front of them. My hope is that the school also understands the window that has now opened up in Notre Dame. Do I expect Ohio State to no longer be a title contender? I'm not saying that. I think that they will be because they're always going to be very talented. Is Bama going to all of a sudden become an 8-4 win football team? No, they're still going to be very good, but they're not going to be what they were under Saban. Michigan, if Harbaugh leaves, is not going to be the team that's the back-to-back playoff team. With all due respect to Sharon Moore, whoever replaces him, Jim Harbaugh's a great coach. Weird, cheater, whatever, but the fact is a great coach. You've now got some powers that are rising. Washington and Oregon, what those two coaches have done in 2 years, what Sark is doing at Texas, assuming he stays there. So there's this changing of the guard happening. And then right in the middle of it, to me, is Notre Dame. And you look at what some second-year coaches have done. Dan Lanning has won 10, 11 games last couple of years. Won the Fiesta Bowl this year over Liberty. Whoop-de-doo. Don't really care about that. But then you look at what he did in his first year, taking over for Mario Cristobal, and their disappointing season that I thought they had the year before. And in his first year, they go 10-3, and they go out and beat North Carolina in the Holiday Bowl. So somebody in the chat said that they have 2 New Year's Six victories. No, they do not. They've only got 1 New Year's Six victory. The Holiday Bowl is not a New Year's Six victory, New Year's Six game. But it's still impressive. It's still an impressive victory. Okay. So he's done some nice things. He has gone in his 2 years with no head coaching experience. Dan Lanning has gone, was it 21-5, 22-5 in 2 years. And he just turned down the potential to be considered by Alabama. Kalen DeBoer comes to Notre Dame, or to Washington, takes over for a 4-8 football team. And in 2 years, they went, 25-3 in 2 years. So you're sitting there in a situation where Notre Dame has done some good things, 19-7. They're 10-3 this year. They're going to finish in the top 15. They've got a great recruiting class coming in. They've already got a very talented freshman class on campus. You've got a really good portal class coming in. You just hired a great, I believe to be a great offensive coordinator, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Notre Dame is in that situation where as some of these programs are either descending or in a step back period before they step back up, you're now in a situation in Notre Dame where you can say, hey, we need to seize advantage of this opportunity. What does that mean? Making strong coaching hires, winning games against those teams that you have to win, taking advantage of it. I've talked about this before. Mike D'Antonio did a phenomenal job during a period of time when Michigan and Ohio State were down of beating those teams on the field and then using that to then springboard into recruiting success. And that's something that's in front of Notre Dame. Go out and beat up Texas A&M next year. Beat USC again next year. Beat Florida State next year. That's another program that's going to be down a little bit. They're still going to be very good. They're still going to be a top 25 team, maybe even a top 10 to 15 team. But it's highly unlikely they go 13-0 next year. And if they do, that's very disappointing for Notre Dame. But they're still going to be good. But can you take advantage of getting that W over them and getting that W over Lincoln Riley? Again, another guy that was considered an elite top 5 to 8 coach that you now have a chance to show, hey, we're 2-3 against this guy, or 2-1 against this guy now. 1-2 out of 3. Those are all things that matter. That if Notre Dame can go out there these next 2 years and earn some of these wins that they have a chance to earn over the next 2 seasons, that all of a sudden starts to impact what you do on the recruiting trail. And my whole point is Marcus Freeman's already doing a good enough job on the recruiting trail to get you fired up about what's coming down the pike, right? Imagine if you start stacking up victories. And we said this coming to this season. That's why I thought this season was a missed opportunity, because if they could have beat, just one of Louisville or Clemson and finished 11-2, that says a lot about, who Marcus Freeman is. But if he starts winning 11, 12, 13, 14 games a season and starts showing, hey, we can contend for a title, now all of a sudden that kid that you thought you had a chance at getting, but ultimately went to Bama, Keon Keeley, now all of a sudden you're winning those games. You're proving you compete for a championship. That means you're putting guys in the NFL. Now all of a sudden, maybe you win that next battle against Keon Keeley. Maybe you win that next battle for Peyton Bowen. Maybe you win that next battle for an Elijah Rushing. Maybe you win that next battle for pick a big-time kid that Notre Dame has barely missed on over the years. You start winning those battles. And those things are all part of it. And that's something to me that you start getting excited about, the opportunity being there. And one of the things we were complaining about as college football fans a year ago, 2 years ago, is we were kind of sick of the same teams being there year after year after year, with the exception of LSU popping up that one time. I mean, you had from 15 to 21, it was Bama, Clemson, Bama, Georgia, Bama, Clemson, LSU, Clemson, Bama, Georgia, Bama, Ohio State, Bama, Georgia. Then all of a sudden, TCU sneaks into the title game, beats Michigan and gets to the title game. This year, you had 2 new teams in the title game, 3 new teams. Well, 2 new teams to the playoff. Wait a minute, hold a second. No, only 1 new team to the playoff. 2 new teams to the championship game, Michigan and Washington, because Washington had been in 16. And so you start looking at it and you start saying to yourself, like, man, like there's a window opening up, a very clear window. Washington did it. Michigan did it. TCU did it. Why can't Notre Dame do it? And the reality is they can. And this offseason is more exciting to me than no question than last season's, because last season was filled with, you Tommy Rees leaves and you think you're going to get Andy Ludwig, which means you think you're also going to get his offensive line coach, because when Tommy left, Harry Hiestand left. So you not only lost your offensive coordinator, but that kind of led to you losing a legend of an offensive line coach. He leaves. You have all that fiasco with Andy Ludwig. Jared Parker gets promoted. I actually liked that promotion once the Andy Ludwig thing went through, but it created such a toxic environment that Jared Parker was never going to get the fair shake from a chunk of the fan base that I think he deserved, to say, let's see how he does in year 1 and then build to year 2. You look at a lot of the different things that were happening. You lose Brian Mason, who was, in my opinion, was the best special teams coordinator of college football. And you're like, good Lord, can we take any more, kicks to the nuts this year? Like, this is ridiculous. And then the season's a disappointment. And you just kind of, even though they were still a 10-3 team or a 9-3 team, a top 20 team, you just kind of felt like, man, this year sucked. 2023 sucked. And then you look at kind of what's happened this offseason. You fire a coach that needed to be fired. You talk about, I'm hoping that Jared Parker can do a good job in year 2. I'm optimistic. I'm encouraged by some of the things, I had said and heard from him and others. But then he leaves and you replace him with Mike Denbrock. I really like Jared Parker. I thought he had potential. But folks, he's not Mike Denbrock. He's not as good as Mike Denbrock. He's not as proven and established as Mike Denbrock. That's exciting. You make the decision to fire Chancey Stuckey and you replace him with a guy that I didn't know a whole lot about early on, but as I study him more, I learn more about him. I have people that tell me things about him, and then you study the tape. You're like, good night. This kid's a good football coach. This guy, he's, and you look at what Chad Bowden and the recruiting staff have done this year, holding that 24 class together. They start beating Ohio State on the recruiting trail. I mean, the year began with us in our feelings about losing Justin Scott to Ohio State and then Peyton Pierce to Ohio State. Since then, Notre Dame has beaten Ohio State for Kingston Viliama-Asa, Gerby Lambert, Riley Leonard, and now, most recently, Christopher Burgess. She said, good Lord, we never could beat – like the only coach that could beat Ohio State for recruits with any consistency the last 10 years was Harry Hiestand. That's it. Beat him for Liam Eichenberg, Tommy Kramer, Zeke Correll, guys like that. Now you're beating them for linebackers and defensive ends and quarterback in the portal and guys like that. And you start to say, boy, I like this universe. I like the fact that Notre Dame is beating Bama for guys like they did with Benjamin Morrison. I like the fact that Notre Dame is holding off Bama trying to flip guys and holding off Georgia trying to flip guys and holding off Ohio State trying to flip guys. This is fun. You're winning some of these battles that in the past you'd have bowed out before. You wouldn't have lost the guy. You'd have bowed out. You start getting excited about it, and then all of a sudden Saban leaves and Harbaugh's leaving and all these kind of things, and all of a sudden you start thinking about, man, there's a window there for Notre Dame. So you went from 23 – I won't speak for you all. I am curious in the chat if you guys feel the same way, but I kind of went from this year sucks in so many ways. I dealt with health issues all year. My wife dealt with some health issues. We've had a huge major flood in our house that's going to cost us a ton of money to fix. That's going to start here in the next few weeks. So we're going to be living upstairs with nothing but construction workers in our bottom two levels for 2 weeks or a month and a half. Mom having health issues, Notre Dame disappoints, the coaching ridiculousness. You have all the decommitments that happened a year ago, and you're thinking, man, this sucks. Like being a Notre Dame fan is taxing. It's tiresome. It's frustrating. And there just was a sense of this is just our lot in life that was happening. And to see how much it's changed in a month with the hires, the portal pickups, the recruiting class signing, Saban retiring, Harbaugh's probably going to leave. All these different things are happening. The 12-team playoff comes next year. And all of a sudden, just like that, I'm fired up. I'm as fired up as I've been about this program in a very long time. But the reality is that can go away just as quickly as it arrived if you don't take advantage of the opportunity that's presented to you. And when Nick Saban retires, I don't care who he replaces him with, that guy's not going to be good as Nick Saban. I don't care who replaces Jim Harbaugh, that guy's not going to be as good as Jim Harbaugh. That's a window. That's an opportunity that's there for Notre Dame. You're proving you can handle the portal and have success. You're recruiting. You can go recruit in the NIL and have success. And NIL is actually a benefit for you. There's a lot of things happening. Your school is paying for coaches. They're investing in the program in ways they haven't in a long time. And now all of a sudden it's like the opportunity is there. Can you take advantage? That's the question. But that's also what I'm very excited about. It is, I will say this, guys, it is, and gals, it is truly the most excited I've been about the chance that Notre Dame can compete for a title, and in a way where I don't have to jump through mental hoops to convince myself that it's possible if this happens. But where you're like, dude, you've got the staff in place at certain key important spots. You've got the talent to go out there and say, we don't need you to come out here and say, we need this to go right. We need this to happen. We need that guy to get hurt. We need this to happen for us to compete with that team. Now you look at it and say, I hope the coaching staff doesn't screw this up, because I'll take that guy, that group against any group in the country. I'll stack. When was the last time we say I'll stack Notre Dame's entire cornerback depth chart up against anybody in the country? I'll stack Notre Dame's running back depth chart against anybody in the country. I'll stack Notre Dame's quarterback depth chart looking to the future up against anybody in the country. I'll stack Notre Dame's linebacker recruiting in the last 2 years up against anybody in the country. And honestly, the receiving class is getting close to being there. And you've done that without taking a step back at tight end, without taking a step back in the offensive line. You start saying, and now all of a sudden, what's the one position we're concerned about? Safety. You just landed a top 50 kid. You landed another top 250 guy, and you've got an opportunity coming up if you can convince Jadon Blair to come to get another top 100 caliber player. That's the weakness of that's been going on recruiting. And so now it's about, okay, this is all great. Now go do it. And that's the opportunity, because if Notre Dame doesn't do it, then eventually the recruiting fades. eventually the portal kids stop coming because they're going to say, I want to go somewhere where I can compete for a championship. Right now, there's a level of faith being shown to Marcus Freeman by recruits, by parents, by the administration, because of who he is and the belief structure he has and what makes a champion. But you have to go prove it. And the opportunity, the window that has opened up for Notre Dame is giant. And you start getting excited about if they can just kick down that door, then this team can go do something and become the power that we all know they can be and hope that they can be, that a lot of us my age and older, that used to be the world we lived in. And it would be awesome for the younger fan base to get to know what that's like. It would be awesome for Ryan to get to know what that's like in ways that I got to experience from 88 to 93. And there's some of the other folks experienced in the 60s and 70s under era. It'd be great to be able to experience that, where it's not just that one year, that one great year, but that one year was great, and I can't wait to see what this team can be next year. And I'm excited for that. But here's the thing, folks. The opportunity is there. The window is there. It's now up to Marcus Freeman, his coaching staff, the recruiting staff, the support staff, and the University of Notre Dame's leadership to say, we're going to do what it takes to seize hold of this opportunity that's in front of us and go out there and take what's ours, which is the top spot in college football. It's an exciting time, and I'm fired up to get there. And we'll see if they do it or not. Going to go to the mailbag next, folks. But before we do, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, share this podcast, give us a 5-star review. We would greatly appreciate that if you're listening via podcast platform. And as always, I'm telling you, don't miss out on what we got going on the Irish Breakdown podcast or on the Irish Breakdown message board, the Champions Lounge. You can find that at boards.irishbreakdown.com. It's always scrolling at the bottom of the screen every single day. You're definitely going to want to check that out. Lots of good stuff going on there. So definitely check that out. And as always, make sure you stay tuned to the Irish Breakdown podcast. We have a few super chats and some questions here that I'm going to get to before we get out of here. We'll start things off with a super chat from Will Falk. He says, thanks so much for the media analysis, Brian. Super helpful to get it from someone like you working in the industry. You are quite welcome, Will, very, very much. Andrew Gilmore, the comment says, Notre Dame should not panic and give Freeman a ridiculous extension. If he leaves, he leaves. They could easily get Luke Fickell, I think. I'm going to say two things about what you said. And then I'll bring up another comment that you had, Andrew. And here's what I'll say. Has Marcus Freeman done anything that should warrant a big, giant Charlie Weiss, Mel Tucker type of extension? No, he has not. Has he shown enough to where if there's a lot of interest in him, you need to step up and make sure that he's taken care of and his staff and his team is taken care of? Yeah, I do think he's shown enough for that because he is coveted. And you don't want to go through another coaching search. You don't want to have to, like, here's the thing. Alabama, possibly Michigan, whoever take those two jobs, those things are going to open up. There's a lot of big-time jobs that are available right now, which means some big-time coaches are getting scooped up that you're probably not going to then be able to go get if Marcus Freeman left in a year from now. And so, yeah, you do need to do what it takes to keep him. But the reality is you don't need to give him a ridiculous extension because he hasn't done the things that it's going to allow him to warrant that. Like, hey, I want $10 million a year. Okay, well, no one else is going to pay $10 million a year. And they're not. I mean, that's just the reality of it. But does that mean you don't give him a good extension? You do, because what extensions can do, they do two things. Number one is, hey, look, he signed an extension. He's committed to here, blah, 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 blah. That's all good. But if you're also smart, if a guy is coveted, there's another reason that you want to sign an extension that's going to, give him more money and give more to his, because an extension to Marcus Freeman now would mean you're giving more money to the coaching pool, the staff pool, and all those other kind of things, right? It would be more of that than necessarily him getting a huge, pay raise. But what you also should do on your end as a school is to say, we're going to get a bigger buyout. I think one thing that Pete Thamel reported yesterday is what he heard, and I don't know if this is true or not, but what he heard is that the buyout for Marcus Freeman's a little over $4 million. That's actually a pretty good sized buyout. So if you're going to say, hey, Coach Freeman, we're going to commit to you. We're committed to you. We're going to give you, an extension. We're going to give you a pay raise. We're going to commit more resources to your staff, to the off-field operation, all these type of things that you've been asking for. We're going to commit to all that. then what you're also doing is getting yourself a much bigger buyout. So that way, if for some reason he does leave, you've got a big buyout pool that you're getting from the school or the NFL team that hires him. And now you have a lot more money if you need to go buy out somebody else and commit to that. So I think there's a lot of merit to that, to making that kind of move. That doesn't mean that you need to go out and spend, $50 million over 3 years to sign him. I think that's a bit ridiculous, but that's not what we're talking about. Now, the second part of what you said they could easily get Luke Fickell. Then you went and said Fickell picked wrong with Wisconsin. It's tough to win there, especially going forward, but he can coach. You can't dismiss it, what he said, what he did at Cincinnati, but I digress. And you had a last note on Fickell. He picked such a bad time to jump to Wisconsin. If he could have stayed on and kept winning at a high level, Cincinnati could have been in contention for Bama, A&M, and maybe Michigan. Andrew, I think you have a very, very slanted, not to say slanted, I don't think that's the right word. It's more of I just think it's an error. I don't think Luke Fickell is a guy, listen, let me tell you something. If people thought Luke Fickell was a good coach, they'd still go after him this year. A&M would have gone after him. Michigan would still go after him if he was that good of a coach. Being at Wisconsin and even as a year where you went 7-6 or whatever it was, that's not all of a sudden going to make people not think you're a good football coach. We've seen that before. We've seen guys go to a place, not have a very good record, but he was highly thought of, and so he gets a better job. We've seen it before. The reality is saying the whole, don't pay Freeman, and because if he leaves, you can go get Luke Fickell. To me, buddy, that is a huge downgrade. Because let me tell you something that's a flat out fact. Luke Fickell is a solid football coach. He's a solid position coach. He was a solid coordinator. He's a solid head football coach. Well, that solid football coach had 2 pretty heck of a really great years at Cincinnati. He did. I'm not trying to take away from that. But let's not kid ourselves and forget the fact that the coaches that were primarily responsible, almost exclusively responsible, and the people for building the roster that let Luke Fickell lead that team are all at Notre Dame now. Marcus Freeman was a dog as a recruiter at Cincinnati, was considered one of the best D coordinators in the business at Cincinnati, which is why he came to Notre Dame and why he's now the head football coach. Mike Denbrock did a phenomenal job as the offensive coordinator at Cincinnati and as a recruiter, and that got him to LSU, which got him back to Notre Dame. Chad Bowden was doing for Marcus Freeman at Cincinnati what he's been doing for Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame, which is recruiting his butt off. And he's not just a guy that, we see Chad, right? Y'all see Chad, and there's some people at Notre Dame, to me, that have a very misguided view of Chad because Chad knows how to play the game. You think of the jukebox, and you think of the dancing and the CIA skit when kids visit and all that stuff. And Chad puts on that persona of, fun, likable, goofy entertainer. You see the clip of him talking about wanting to get Marcus Freeman to jump out of a helicopter or something on a parachute for a recruit. And you see that part of Chad and you're like, that guy's a great recruiter. He's a showman and all this kind of stuff. But what a lot of you don't realize about Chad is also a great evaluator. And a lot of these guys that these coaches have gone after at certain positions were guys that Chad Bowden went and found. Nobody on the Notre Dame staff knew who Brandon Hillman was last year till Chad Bowden went and found him. And I could go down this long list of players that the guy that was like, we need to go after that guy is Chad Bowden. And that's the kind of faith that Marcus Freeman and a lot of the coaches have in Chad. Hey, man, go find me some players and then I'll help you land them. And there's certain coaches that have more say on it, on who they get and who they want and things like that. Like Chad Bowden wasn't going to tell Harry Hiestand to recruit, nor did he try. But a lot of these things he's a great evaluator. He played a big role in this talent that they brought in Cincinnati. Mike Mickens played a big role in the talent that they brought into Cincinnati under Luke Fickell. Now, he came to Notre Dame, obviously earlier than Marcus Freeman did, but only by a year. It's not like he was gone that long. And so, to me, when I look at Mike Mickens and I look at Chad Bowden and I look at Mike Denbrock, and, of course, I look at Marcus Freeman, and you realize, dude, the people that recruited that roster are all at Notre Dame now. And I think they deserve more of the credit for the ultimate high-level success that Luke Fickell had than he does, meaning, he's a good football coach. I'm not trying to take that away from him. but his ceiling was raised because of the people he had doing the talent acquisition for him. I don't think he's a great recruiter. He's a good recruiter. Luke Fickell's a good football coach, but he's not what people made him out to be because of a Cincinnati run, because I think that was fueled in large part by the work that other people did. Now, kudos to him for putting together that staff. He hired all those guys. Props to him for doing that. But as he showed at Wisconsin so far, I don't think he's been able to replicate that type of assistant coach production that he had when he made all those good hires. So, that's just kind of where I'm at. I'm not that high on Luke Fickell. I don't think he's a great coach. I think he's a good coach. He does some things that I like, but he is not a Notre Dame guy. I feel a lot about like I felt about Matt Campbell. Matt Campbell's a good football coach at that level. Luke Fickell's a good football coach at the levels he's been at. He's not a Notre Dame guy. And the guys that I think did the recruiting to build those rosters up are at Notre Dame, which is something we should all kind of be excited about. And so I just, you and I just have a disagreement on how good Luke Fickell is. I think you do need to do what it takes to keep Marcus Freeman, understanding that the situation, because I know your fear, Andrew. I think I do. You're, recently looking at Mel Tucker, but you're probably thinking about the Charlie Weiss situation. Well, here's the difference. When Charlie Weiss signed his big contract, it's because his agent was able to play up the whole NFL aspect of it. Marcus Freeman doesn't have that. He's not someone who has 4 Super Bowl rings as an offensive coordinator that's going to have NFL teams calling him. It's just not the reality. So he couldn't demand as much as Charlie Weiss did. So it's a little bit of a different situation, in my opinion, than where we are now. But I also think you can't deny the things that Marcus Freeman has changed about the Notre Dame program that also has a lot of value that has not manifested itself in wins and losses yet, but that will. And I think Notre Dame is smart enough to know that. And so that if Marcus Freeman goes to them and says, hey, I need an extension, I do think you have that conversation. I just don't know if that's the conversation Marcus Freeman's worried about right now. I think the things Marcus Freeman is, and this goes back to my first segment, I think the things that Marcus Freeman is fighting for right now are more about, I don't care about I'm making good. I mean, look, guys, $5 million plus in Northern Indiana, even in this economy where things are more expensive and values of this and all that are going up. That's a lot of flipping money. He's doing well. Even with 6 kids, he's doing pretty well. What Marcus Freeman is fighting for right now, from everything I've been told, is I want more for my assistants. I want a bigger support staff. I want this facility upgrade. I want that facility upgrade. I want this part of the program invested in more. I want that part of the program invested in more. Those are the battles Marcus Freeman is fighting right now. I want help with the portal. And I didn't mention this when I was talking earlier, but like one of the benefits, like one of the big things about the portal is you look at Riley Leonard and Bo Collins, those guys are not early graduates. They're not. So that getting those guys who aren't graduates yet is huge. That means the school's working with them to some degree. And so those are the things that Marcus Freeman's fighting for right now. Not, hey, let me take advantage of this rumor that's going out about, Alabama and me and use that to try to get, $4 million a year and an extension from Notre Dame. I think there's merit to Notre Dame seeking out an extension with Marcus Freeman right now. I think there's merit to that. I just don't know if there's a need for it right now because I don't think that he's looking. I don't think there's the need to keep him there. I don't think his agents, hold Notre Dame over the coals for all these teams that are talking to him. I think what they're fighting for now is more about, yeah, of course, Marcus Freeman's not going to turn down a pay raise, but he's fighting for all the other stuff that he knows has to get better. Because paying him $2-3 more million extra a year doesn't make the football program any better. It doesn't make the weight room better, doesn't make the locker room better, doesn't make the nutrition program better, doesn't make the recruiting staff bigger, it doesn't make the support staff bigger, it doesn't mean he can hire more analysts, it doesn't mean he can pay Mike Mickens to stay, it doesn't mean he can pay Al Golden to stay, it doesn't mean he can go hire Mike Denbrock, it doesn't mean he can, all these type of things, it doesn't mean any of that stuff. Those are the things he's fighting for right now. Not that. But I think it would be smart for Notre Dame to, if they needed to get to that point in time, it would be smart for them to actually do it. Because I do believe that going from him to Luke Fickell would be a big step down. It's not a coincidence he went to Wisconsin and got exposed a little bit. It's not a coincidence. And that would be a big step down for me. A very big step down for me. Maybe he's better at certain parts of running a program just because he has the experience, but that's going to be gone real quick. But the ability to acquire talent is not going to be anywhere close to what this current staff has done and will continue to do as they upgrade with guys like Mike Denbrock and Mike Brown. That's going to be huge. Nicholas Grosh asks, how many current Alabama players were offered by Notre Dame? Should Notre Dame pursue any of these current players? I mean, there's a lot of guys for Alabama that have been offered by Notre Dame. I mean, I mean, you just look at the 2023 class. I mean, there's obviously an important guy like Keon Keeley, and I still wish he would have been a guy that would have come to Notre Dame. I do. And yeah, we all look, I've had the same hope and thought as you guys. Hey, Nick Saban's leaving, and maybe we can get Keon Keeley, but I don't think there's going to be the mass exodus that people think there's going to be from Alabama. There's going to be some kids that, Ryan Williams is already decommitted, and there'll be some guys that jump in the portal, but I don't think you're going to have this thing that's going to necessarily happen. I hope it does. I'm not going to lie to you. I kind of hope it does, but when you talk about guys that Notre Dame recruited that were offered, that Bama got that were offered by Notre Dame, I mean, just looking at the 2023 class, the guys that are current freshmen, because again, those guys are going to be in a different situation than Notre Dame. Obviously, Justice Haynes, the running back, was offered by Notre Dame. Richard Young was offered by Notre Dame and visited. Jalen Hale was offered by Notre Dame. Never really seriously considered him. Caden Proctor was offered by Notre Dame. They weren't going to get him. Hunter Osborne was offered by Notre Dame. Keon Keeley, Caleb Downs, Tony Mitchell. So those are those eight guys. I mean, the only ones that if they jumped in the portal, I think Notre Dame would kind of have any interest / shot at would be Keon and Caleb Downs would really be it. Those would really be the only two guys that would be at all options if they jumped in the portal. And I don't see that happening right now. I don't have any evidence of it. I don't have any rumblings. I'm not mentioning Keon, as like, I know he's jumping in the portal, but I can't say it yet. So I'm not saying anything to you guys. I'm not saying that at all. I've heard nothing from Keon or anybody else around him about him jumping in the portal. I'm just telling you that's a pipe dream that I wish would happen. 2019 Elijah Brown, but he's already transferred. Tyler Booker, I doubt he goes anywhere. Sean Murphy was offered. Earl Little, he's already transferred. Jake Pope, he's already transferred. I would have no interest in him. Emmanuel Henderson, no, that's not going anywhere. Kendrick Law, no, that's not going to happen. Ty Simpson, hard pass on that one. So I mean, you look at the last few classes. Now the interesting one would be obviously the 2024 class, because those guys haven't signed yet, but there's not a lot of those either. Caleb Bowden at tight end is not a guy that Notre Dame was really hard on. Ja'Shawn Ross, they liked him, very talented player. That wasn't going to be a fit. Sterling Dixon, no. Caden Jones, linebacker, no. Zabian Brown, no, you're kind of good at corner. He's a good player. Jalen Mbakwe, that kid's still going to go to Bama, in my opinion. Zay Mincy, they offered. He was never coming to Notre Dame. Peyton Woodyard, I don't think so. I don't see that one. I think if he were to leave, he'd probably go to, Georgia or USC or something like that, Ohio State, something like that, not Notre Dame. And then Julian Sand. Again, you don't have a need for Julian Sand because you got a better quarterback than Julian Sand in the class. So I don't know that there'd be a lot of guys that would be jumping in the portal and coming to Notre Dame. So I know it'll happen if some of these guys do jump in. You're going to see people getting fired up about it, but it's kind of I'll believe it when I see it type of situation. But it'd be nice. It'd be really, really nice. So we shall see. All right. Irish Canson, no one offers what Notre Dame does to recruit. The same thing was true about Alabama, though in a different way. What impact does this have going forward? I talked a little bit about that. I mean, Alabama, there's certain things that we don't know. I know that Bama's not going to be as good over the course of a 10-year period under whoever replaces Nick Saban as Nick Saban was. Nick Saban was a phenomenal coach. I mean, let's just not act like, well, he got to Notre Dame and all of a sudden, or he got to Alabama, all of a sudden that's when he started winning. This guy won a title at LSU. This is a guy that had built up Michigan State to be a pretty darn good football team. This is a guy that won at Toledo. This is a guy that won, he was a part of a Cleveland Browns team that went to the playoffs under Bill Belichick. I mean, this is a guy that was a great coach before he showed up at Alabama. So you're not going to replace him with somebody like that was on his level. Does that mean is that going to change Notre Dame's, success on the recruiting trail? If he would have left a year ago, could Notre Dame have maybe gotten Keon Keeley? Maybe. For all we know, Keon would have gone to Ohio State or Georgia or Florida or somebody like that, for all we know. I don't know. I don't know what Keon would have done. Maybe they would have still got Keon Keeley. But I don't think for the most part, like if If Richard Young didn't pick Bama, he wasn't picking Notre Dame. If Justice Haynes didn't pick Bama, he wasn't picking Notre Dame. If Jalen Hale didn't pick Bama, he wasn't picking Notre Dame. So I don't know how much it'll change, but here's the deal. You just got to beat Bama for one or two guys a year that you normally are losing to them for, and all of a sudden the game has changed. If you only beat them for Caleb Downs or Keon Keeley last year, that's pretty good. Like if Caleb Downs didn't pick Alabama last year, I think he probably picks Ohio State. Maybe he picks Georgia, but probably Ohio State. I don't think he picks Notre Dame. I think his family wanted him to pick Notre Dame, but I don't think Caleb really liked Notre Dame. He liked Notre Dame, but not to the degree that he liked the other teams that had a more proven track record. Now, if he jumped in the portal now, could that change based on what Notre Dame has done with what Kyle Hamilton has become, what Alohi Gilman's in the NFL, what Xavier Watts did this year? Maybe. But I don't know that would necessarily be enough for him to come Notre Dame. So I don't know how much this is going to impact Notre Dame. I think it's going to be more like, LSU might beat them for a kid or two more. Georgia might beat them for a kid or two more. Texas, Ohio State, Tennessee. I think everybody could kind of start picking at the carcass a little bit. I don't know that this is going to be like a tidal wave of kids coming to Notre Dame now that were otherwise going to Alabama. I don't know that's not necessarily that's necessarily where things are going to go. I don't quite see it turning into that. But I'll say this though, Irish, I really hope I'm wrong. Really hope that I'm wrong, and that this does in fact open up a tidal wave of kids coming to Notre Dame. That's basically what it took. So what would if that happened, it would be phenomenal. But it would take Nick Saban leaving for that to happen. Got a few super chats. Got one from Charlie Weiss's last bell loop. Thank you, my man. Why would anyone want Fickle at Notre Dame? He can't recruit, and he's a weirdo. The recruiting would fall off if he did come to Notre Dame. Freeman is the guy. Go Irish breakdown. I don't know that he's a weirdo. I don't know about him. I don't know a lot about him in that regard. I don't know that he's a weirdo. I'd be curious to hear kind of why you think that. But to you, I don't think he's I think he's a solid coach that's a Wisconsin or below type of guy. That's what I think. I think he'd have been better off staying in Cincinnati, to be honest with you, if they were willing to pay him. But Wisconsin's a good job. And, they were trending down. Like, I'm not a big Luke Fickell fan, but let's not also forget that Wisconsin was trending down when he took over. So it's not like he took over an 11-2 team and all of a sudden in his first year, they fall off to, 7-6 or whatever it was this year. Were they 7-6 or were they 6? I think they were 7-6, right? Yeah, they went 7-6 this year. Had some bad losses this year, as well. Not only being 7-6, but you lose to Washington State, you lose at home to Iowa, you lose at Indiana, you lose at home to Northwestern. Like, really? No really impressive wins. I mean, what was their best win this year? Minnesota on the road, Nebraska in overtime, Illinois on the road, Rutgers. I mean, Rutgers is probably your biggest win. I mean, no big wins, but at the same time, he inherited a team that was kind of already trending down. So I want to be fair to him as well, but I just think that's who he is. I don't know about him being a weirdo. I hadn't heard anything like that, but yeah. Tyler Evans with a super chat. How do you think Bama fans are feeling today? I mean, one of the funniest things last night is, you had this like candlelight vigil going on, and people were bringing like oatmeal cookies, which he loves, and Cokes, which he loves apparently. And they were putting them on his statue, and they were like flowers and candles, and like people were gathering. And all these people, like all these sports writers are tweeting like, the dude's not dead. Like Bama fans are acting like he died. It's crazy. And they're like in mourning today. So that's kind of how they're feeling today. And the other thing too is there's probably a lot of angst about who's the replacement going to be. And I would be shocked if they're excited about Mike Norvell. And I think Mike Norvell's a good coach, but he just doesn't have that same, cachet. But also, if Mike Norvell's your coach, it means you got turned down by Dan Lanning and Steve Sarkisian. That would have them a little concerned. But I think it depends on who they hire. If they hire Sark, I think you'll see Bama fans pretty excited. Like, hey, the torch has been passed. Nick Saban retired. He picked the successor. That guy had his team in the playoff last year. He had Texas back. He beat the legend in the last time. It's true. Sark came to Tuscaloosa and beat Saban in Saban's last year. So I think that would make them a little bit more happy. But oh, look, they're in mourning. I mean, you watch the clip of was it Matt Moscona from LSU? He's a very professional guy and very calm. And then he finds out the same. He lost it, man. It was hilarious. He's screaming, running around the studio. I was dying laughing. It's like the ding dong, the wicked witch is dead kind of thing, you know. And it's just like because they know what's happening right now. They know the seismic shift that's about to happen right now. I don't think Alabama's going to go from what they are now to like what they were under Mike DeBose and Mike Shula and guys like that. They're still going to be a pretty good program if they make the right hire. I just don't know if Mike Norvell's that guy. But Sark would be a great hire for me if they're able to get that done. Michael S. Alabama surprises last year. You don't see them doing it again this year. No, I don't. I think they were honestly. I don't think they should have been in the playoff this year. I don't. Florida State should have been in, and I don't care their quarterback, got injured. And he was, well, look what happened to them in the Orange Bowl. Then a huge portion of their team didn't even play. Those Keon Coleman would have played, Johnny Wilson would have played, Jared Verse would have played, Trey Benson would have played. They all would have played in the playoff game. All those guys that left and didn't play against Georgia all would have played against Michigan. Does Michigan still win? Maybe not. I don't know. It would have been a good game. I probably would have bet on Michigan since they didn't have Jordan Travis. I don't think Tate Rodemaker would have been able to make enough plays against Michigan, but they still deserve to be in because guess what? Jalen Milroe didn't make a whole lot of plays against Michigan either. But they weren't a great team this year. They benefited from the fact that it was a very down year in college football, which we said at the beginning of the year it was going to be. So, no, I mean, but look, it's hard for me to say that definitively, Michael, because I don't know who their new head coach is going to be. If Sark's their new head coach, we could see something. Because he'll have a new quarterback. You'll probably see Dylan Lonergan be their quarterback next year, or you'll see a kid transfer in. That'll probably what happen. T Guns, see what T Guns has got. Will Freeman do a cool little "The Shamrocks are greener with more gold" at Notre Dame video? I doubt it, but I mean, I'd still do it. I'd still play. I would play it up just for a recruiting tool. But no, his circumstance is a lot different than Dan Lanning's. Andrew Gilmore says Dabo really needs to change. Could you imagine if Clemson had signed Keon Coleman instead of Florida State? It could have changed their entire season. I don't get it. I don't know that it would have changed their entire season. They had a lot of issues. And, maybe they win one more game. I don't know that it would have changed things a whole bunch. I mean, Clemson was still already way better. I mean, Florida State was already way better than Clemson, and Keon just made it even better. I don't know that it would have changed it a whole bunch. But I understand why he's doing it. I mean, guys, Dabo, if he starts making Dabo's problem is not that he's not doing enough with NIL. It's not that he's not, going in the portal. That's not Dabo's problem. Dabo's problem is he's made some not very good coaching hires. And the evaluation that they've done recruiting wise, because he doesn't have as good of a coaching staff, has not been as good. If Dabo recorrects and make some good coaching hires, let Garrett Riley do his thing, make sure you're bringing in some strong recruiters, make sure you're bringing some guys who can really coach and recruit, they'll be fine. They'll still get back to recruiting big time players and finding those sleeper kids like Isaiah Simmons and others, and they'll be fine. And yeah, I mean, should he at least consider the portal for, I mean, at the very least, he should do what Notre Dame's doing, which is find a graduate player to kind of plug a hole for a year. I mean, there's no reason not to do that, but I don't think that's Dabo's problem. I think his problem has been coaching hires, not his unwillingness to embrace other things. So, yeah. And then there was another question about the video from Hold My Shalala and some other folks. But yeah, his circumstances way down. Dan Lanning was legitimately pursued for the job. Yeah. Michael S. Super Chat. Bama got our OC last year. Why not our head coach this year? Michael, I would encourage you to go listen to the first 45 minutes of the show. And you'll have your answer. I'm not trying to be flippant, but literally the first 45 minutes of the show was dictated towards that. I'm not going to repeat it here. I would encourage you to just hit the rewind button, go back to the beginning, and I spent 45 minutes talking about why Bama's not going to hire Notre Dame's head coach this year. So, yeah, not happening. Link asks, realistically, what are the odds that Notre Dame reaches out to Keon Keeley and Caleb Downs? I would imagine that whatever legal means that are there, that they'll explore those. Certainly would do that. I don't know that it would have any impact, but I would if I was Notre Dame. Hey, Keon, Let him know we'd love to have him. You know, Caleb, let him know we'd love to have him. You know, whatever legal means there are, if it's talking to the high school coach or whatever the case may be, let him know, like, hey, there's a spot here for you, buddy. Love to have you. And yeah, I would. Will it matter? Doubt it. But again, I can't really know until we know who the new head coach is. If they went out and somehow like promoted, like if they went and hired some like, I don't know, former Charles Huff from Marshall, like that's gonna be a problem, because as much as I like the job that Charles Huff is doing at Marshall, he's not ready for Bama yet. You know what I mean? If they went out and hired, I'm trying to think of something like Jim McElwain from West Central Michigan or whatever, some former Bama assistant who just like, what, that guy? Then yeah, you'd see kids leave. But if they hire Steve Sarkisian, nobody's going anywhere. I don't think. No way. I just don't see it. Kids will stay, and the kids that leave will be kids that are like, yeah, I'm bringing in this guy, so you may want to bounce. It just depends on who they hire, and I think most of these kids are going to wait to see who they replace them with before they make any decisions. Would be my guess, of the kids that have signed and are already at school. I mean, not the recruits as much, but the kids that are already on the team. Andrew Gilmore asked, does Mike Norvell have the recruiting chops to get the Bama job? I don't think so. But, there's been guys who don't recruit well that have gotten big jobs before. I mean, look, you can say whatever you want about his recruiting chops, but the guy just went 13-0 the regular season and was showed that he can recruit the portal for sure. Can he recruit at the high school level as well? I don't know. We'll see. If Sark goes to Bama, would that break the portal? I don't think so. I think sometimes we anticipate these tidal waves of things that happen after a coach leaves that rarely happen. I mean, it happened a little bit with USC and Oklahoma. That's because of, Lincoln Riley was a unique situation because he didn't sell Oklahoma when he recruited. He sold himself. So of course kids are going to leave. I don't know that Sark is that way. So will we see some kids leave Texas to follow Sark? Yeah, we will. Will we see some kids that sign with Texas, maybe sign with Alabama now? Sure. Will we see some kids from Bama leave? Sure. But I don't know that it'll come anywhere close to what you're referring to. But it would certainly make for an interesting offseason if it did. That's for sure. 99 Problems with BK81. If you're Marcus Freeman, you have it pretty sweet at Notre Dame. Let's be real. You have the support with getting whatever coach you want, NIL, strength facilities, and et cetera. I agree with you. Hold My Shalala says, do you think that happens if Notre Dame wins this year? I personally think it's too soon and too much coming in for him to leave right now. Again, about Marcus Freeman again. I spent a lot of the show talking about that. I just don't see him leaving. Andrew Gilmore, do you think Notre Dame's admin is feeling any pressure to extend Freeman before next season? I do not. Lucky Ducks 512. Do you think Notre Dame's degree helps Notre Dame keep kids out of the portal more so than other top programs? Absolutely. That's not even a debate. That's not even me guessing. That's just, God, you talk to players, you talk to parents, you talk to coaches. All of that will tell you. That's a no-brainer. Absolutely. Absolutely. That has a big role. Now, that doesn't mean every kid's going to stay, and especially for younger players like freshmen, won't care as much about that because they're so far away. But I would be shocked if you start to see Notre Dame's portal losses of guys that are playing or close to their degrees go way up. What you saw from Notre Dame this year was freshmen and graduates going to the portal. Let me look at Notre Dame's actual because we have this on the message board. We actually have a breakdown of who's leaving and who's coming. So let me just look at the portal comings and goings. So Chris Tyree, graduate. Braylon James, true freshman. Rico Flores, true freshman. Zeke Carell, graduate. Michael Carmody, graduate. Nana, graduate. Aiden Keana, graduate. Ramon Henderson, graduate. Antonio Carter, graduate. Ryan Barnes, not a graduate, but his situation was different. Then you had Holden Stace was a sophomore, and you had Braylon and Tobias Merriweather. So you had a couple kids in there. Those situations were different as well. Holden Stace was kind of getting buried on the depth chart. Tobias had his issues with the coach, and then Ryan Barnes had some other things that resulted in the reason why he is no longer at Notre Dame. So actually I need to update the arrivals because I do not have Rod Hurd on there. I just realized I did not do that. So give me 1 second here, folks. I'm going to update that on the board, and we'll be caught up. So Notre Dame has had 13 portal departures and 8 portal arrivals. They're going to need at least 5 more portal departures to get down to 85 between now and the end of the season. So that'll be kind of interesting to see how that plays out. Sloppy Joe, what type of head coach would you rather have? Great X's and O's, but just very good at recruiting, or a great recruiter, but just very good at X's and O's? Great recruiter that's just good at X's and O's. Like, that is much to me. If you've got a great X's and O's guy and just good at recruiting or very good, you're going to be pretty darn good. I still feel like if you're very good at X's and O's, but great at recruiting, you're going to be better than a guy who's very good at recruiting and great at X's and O's. I think you see that all the time. So, yeah, give me the more talented team with still good coaching. Now, if you were to say, give me a guy who's a great X's and O's guy and a great motivator and developer, but a mediocre recruiter, over a guy who's a great recruiter, but a mediocre developer and a mediocre X's and O's guys, give me the great developer and X's and O's guy who's a mediocre recruiter, because honestly, your coaching is going to then get more kids to want to come to be developed there. You know, a guy like that's also going to be really good at finding sleepers. Look at Kirk Ferentz, right? So I would take that. But if you're very good at both, then I still feel like you're still better off going with the very good X's and O's guy who's a great recruiter. But if it's great and very good, you're good either way. It's just I'm going to go with the latter on that one. Andre Tonsil, thank you, Andre, says, which position groups need to be the dog this spring? Doesn't matter if it's offensive, defensive, or both. You know, it's funny, Andre, Ryan and I were talking about kind of our topics for upcoming weeks, and this is going to be part of our topic of conversation. But for me, you know, look, it's offensive line and defensive line. That's an easy one for me. If we're going to take groups, Notre Dame needs, we talked about this yesterday, Andre, in the show yesterday. Notre Dame's got to be really, really, really good on both lines. They were really, really good on the defensive line, but can get better. They were not good on the offensive line. Not good, nearly good enough on the offensive line. So those two groups need to be dogs. And if you want to pick one on each side of the ball, it's lines, absolutely lines. 99 Problems BK1, pushing back a little bit. No impact with Keon Even. I thought Saban was a big reason he chose Alabama. Saban, the ability of Alabama to produce NFL players is why. What I'm saying to you is Saban leaving is not going to create some mass exodus to the portal. I just don't think that it will. What's going to do that is if the replacement's not a big-time coach. Like, listen, you look at if Steve Sarkisian comes, right? I mean, look what Texas did this year. They were a playoff team. They've had, you know, they had a D tackle that won the Outland Trophy and all these other kind of things. Like that. That's not going to. I'm leaving. I'm out of here. You know, if Kalen DeBoer did, maybe, even though he had a ton of success, he's just not the name that Sark is. Could Mike Norvell result in that? Maybe. I'm just telling you, like, you're not going to see this mass exodus of players leaving the program until they know who the coach is going to be. And I mean, I hope I'm wrong. I wish Keon Keeley was reaching out to Notre Dame coaches today. I wish Caleb Downs was reaching out to Notre Dame coaches today. I just don't see it. Now, could it happen when the new coach is named? Sure. But look, I promise you that one of the conversations Nick Saban had with the players was, guys, don't anybody do this. Just give us 2 to 3 days. We know who we want to get, because I think this is going to happen pretty quickly. I think they know exactly the line of succession that they want, and as they get turned down, they're just going to go to the next guy. If this drags on more than 2-3 days, it means they got turned down by all their top candidates. And then that could maybe happen. But like if Steve Sarkisian's the coach, I don't think it has much of an impact. They'll lose some guys most likely, but I don't think it changes a whole lot. I really don't. PK asked, theoretically, if Keon Keeley's interested in transferring to Notre Dame, would this be a next semester potential switch or next year switch? I mean, it could happen now. I don't believe Notre Dame has started the semester, as long as they could get Keon through the admissions department quick enough, which, you know, is one of the things Marcus Freeman has said that they've done. And as long as he was going to class and doing what he needed to do, I mean, if Keon was getting like C's and D's in all his classes, they're probably not going to be able to get him in. But as long as he was doing okay his first 2 semesters, they'll probably be able to get him in pretty quickly, and he could come this semester, theoretically, if he was interested. At the very least, he could, you know, hey, look, your grades aren't good enough. If this is where you want to be this semester, you need to do this, this, and this, and then we'll take you in the summer. You know, I certainly can see that, but Don't believe the Notre Dame semester has started. So I do believe you'd be able to get Keon Keeley to Notre Dame if he was interested. I just don't know that he is, to be honest with you. All right, let's get to a couple, see if we got any more questions here. Irish fan 15, Coach, if you were Greg Byrne, who would you go after to be the next head coach? I think the guy that I think that they want right now that they're going after, from what I've heard, is Steve Sarkisian. That would be my choice. I think he's a dynamic offensive mind. He won a championship as an offense coordinator at Bama. He knows the boosters. He was very well liked. He's shown that he's a dogged recruiter. I mean, Texas has landed 2 really good back-to-back recruiting classes, including beating Bama for several players. You know, he answered a lot of questions you have about, can he be a good game day coach? I mean, you say, well, Steve Sarkisian's never accomplished anything in coaching. That was true prior to this year. He won the Big 12. He went 12-1 or 12-2. He beat Bama at Bama. You know, he showed a lot this year. Now, can he do it sustained? I mean, no, of course we don't know if he can do it from a sustained standpoint. We've never seen him do it, but he answered a lot of questions this year, in my opinion. And just the fit, the name recognition, the recruiting chops, the fact that he went into Tuscaloosa and beat them this past year. There's just a lot of reasons why I think that would make the most sense. I think Sark would be a as good of a hire as you can get. You know, and one of the questions I had next is like, Brian Berkshire, what's your take on being the coach who follows a legend? I never want to be that guy. Like, I think Urban Meyer did it perfectly. Urban Meyer did not replace Steve Spurrier. He replaced Ron Zook, who replaced Steve Spurrier. He didn't replace Jim Tressel. He replaced Luke Fickell, who served as an interim the year before the year after Jim Tressel got left out. So he was taking over a program that was pretty bad the year before he took over because Tressel was out. You just don't want to be that guy, in my opinion. And so if you're Bama and you're able to get a guy like Sarkisian to follow Saban, that's a home run, in my opinion. Absolute home run. D. Beasy. Can Don Schuler be a great tandem with Watts next year? Yeah, I think she's got a chance. I think what you're probably going to see early, to be honest with you, is you're probably going to see, Rod Hurd have a chance to kind of be that guy early on. And, let me get this person out. He'll probably have a chance to come in and compete. I think Rod Hurd is probably going to be the early leader in the clubhouse because he's experienced and all this kind of stuff. But I think Don will get every chance to play. But here's the thing, D. Beasy, is he doesn't have to be a starter to be an impact player for Notre Dame next year. Because as I said yesterday, when we were breaking down Rod Hurd, like the number 3 safety, at the very least, 3 safeties are going to play a ton of football this year. And I'll give you the snap breakdown this season for Notre Dame. Just give me 1 second to pull this up. This is according to Pro Football Focus, who does snaps for the team. So if you look at the this season at the safety position, for example, Xavier Watts played 708 snaps. DJ Brown played 595 snaps. And Ramon Henderson played 304 snaps at safety. So you had 3 guys that played a lot. If you go to 2022, you had 505 snaps from DJ Brown, 431 from Brandon Joseph, 366 from Xavier Watts, 319 from Ramon Henderson, and 304 from Houston Griffith. They had a lot more safeties that were in position to play the year before, so they played them all. They're going to play at least 3 safeties a bunch. And when you look at the 3rd safety this year, Ramon Henderson, even though he was the 3rd safety and played, let's see, the number 2 safety, DJ Brown, was 595. He played 291 fewer snaps than the starting safety. He still was 13th on the entire defense in total snaps and was 51 above the next guy. So he still played a ton of football. Don Schuler, if he's the number 3 safety next year, just the number 3 is going to play a ton of football next season. And he's got to keep that in mind. He's got to remember that. And so if he is able to stay focused, then I think he'll have a chance to go out there and be successful and be a key part of that. And if he really breaks out, then he'll be the number 2 and Rod Hurd will be the number 3. And now you're even better, in my opinion. Last question from Stephen Goodson. What about Coach Kalen DeBoer to Alabama? Again, I don't know if Kalen DeBoer is a phenomenal football coach. He proved that at Washington. He proved that at at Fresno. He proved that as the OC at Indiana. He proved that at Sioux Falls. Look, Brian Kelly always gets this credit for things he did at Grand Valley State. And I mean, that's fine. I've told you that's when I started studying Brian Kelly as a football coach. I think he did a phenomenal job, and talk about all his championships. But let's not forget that Kalen DeBoer coached for 5 years at the NAIA level and won 3 national titles in 4 years. And the year that he didn't win the national championship was the year that he lost in the national championship game 17-9. So you're talking about a guy that as a head coach over a 4-year period, I mean, this is just kind of nuts. So let me just add this up real quick. In a 4-year period at Sioux Falls, which is an NAIA school, Kalen DeBoer led his team to a 56-1 record. In 5 years, because his first year, they finished 4th and went to the semifinals. In his entire career, went 67-3. He takes over Fresno. His first year is the COVID year. They go 3-3. The next year, he goes 9-3. Takes over a Washington team that went 4-8. And in his 2 years, he go 11-2 and 14-1. The guy can flat out coach. The question that I would have, would he be a dynamic enough personality? And would he be a dynamic enough recruiter to be at Bama? That's a question mark. That's a legitimate question mark. But to your point that somebody else mentioned, Kalen DeBoer has a 37-9 record as a Division I head coach. 37-9. His overall coaching record as a head coach, he's 104-12 with 3 national titles, 2 national. He's been a head coach, y'all, for 9 years. 9 years. In those 9 years, he's won 3 national championships and lost in the national title game 2 other times. Guy's a phenomenal coach. Phenomenal coach. But to win at Bama, you've got to have the kind of dynamic personality and the recruiting chops to be successful there. Does he have that? I don't know enough about him to know that. But can the guy flat out coach? Heck yes. There's no doubt. Would he win at Bama? How can I say no? He's literally won everywhere he's been. Again, 9 years as a head coach, 3 national titles, 2 other national title game appearances, a semifinal appearance, and then in another year, they went 8th. He's been a coach 8 years where they played a full season. His worst year as a head coach in a full season, so take the COVID year out, is 9-3. That's his worst year as a head coach. And, guy's a heck of a coach. So, I'll say this. I'm not betting against Kalen DeBoer to win anywhere. I will tell you what my concerns would be at a place like Bama or Texas if he were to replace Sark at Texas would be, can he recruit at an elite level? That would be a different question mark. But if he can recruit at all or hire people that can recruit, good Lord, he's going to win because the guy is a tremendous football coach. There's no doubt about that. No doubt about that. So that's it, folks. So that's going to wrap up today's show with a little quick mailbag. Thank you all so much for your questions today. I appreciate y'all very, 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 very much. I had fun today. Hope you guys had fun today. Hope you guys enjoyed the show today. I really, really do. Before you go, sign up for the message boards at boards@irishbreakdown.com. You will not regret it. I promise you, you will not regret that. Hit that like button, everybody. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell. Share this podcast. I got to run because I'm going and make my wife and her friend who's coming over tonight to hang out with her. I'm going to make them dinner tonight. And so I'm going to be a good husband. I'm making steak and Brussels sprouts. And I'm going to cut up some potatoes in little circles. And I'm going to put those in the air fryer and make those nice and crispy. So I'm going to be getting lots of props tonight from my wife for being a good husband. And I enjoy cooking as well. So I'm going to go chill for a little bit, get that taken care of. And I'm going to come back down and get to work because we have a lot of stuff going on, man. A lot of stuff going on. Ryan will be back with you guys tomorrow. He's going to have a recruiting show tomorrow. He's going to have an interview with Christopher Burgess on there. He's going to have an interview with Marco Jones on there. And then he's going to talk about the latest around Notre Dame. I don't think that they are done picking up commitments in the month of January. I think we'll probably see some more. Who those are going to be, we shall see. So for Brian, the rest of the IB team, we thank you all so very much for being with us. We love you all very much. We have a great, great community, Irish Breakdown. And just can't wait to be with you all again. We might do a show Might do a show this weekend, but Vince is going out of town, so I'm not sure if we'll be able to, but we are going to start doing some more weekend shows here coming up as well. So we have a lot planned for you guys, a lot of fun stuff planned, and I look forward to you seeing it, and I look forward to doing it. So have a great week, rest of your week, everybody. IB Nation Sports Talk tonight at 6. Recruiting show is going to be tomorrow at 1 with Ryan, and I'll talk to you guys again very soon on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.